A show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Could we be accepting freedom of movement within the European Union?
Well, the government is set to offer EU countries a youth mobility scheme as part of Brexit reset talks with the bloc.
Well, the Australian-style agreement would see tens of thousands of youngsters living and working here.
Elon Musk echoes Donald Trump. The world's richest man claims President Zelenskyy is feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. That's as the Foreign Secretary David Lammy warns Russia doesn't have the appetite for peace.
Well, this comes as the Washington war of words intensifies. Nigel Farage has waded in.
You should always take everything Donald Trump says seriously. You shouldn't always take things that Donald Trump says absolutely literally. Zelenskyy is not a dictator, but it's only right and proper that Ukrainians have a timeline for elections.
Elsewhere, South Wales police plans to use facial recognition cameras across Cardiff during the Six Nations. So are we heading towards an Orwellian society?
It's a new mission for the makers of James Bond as Amazon takes control of 007.
A huge breakthrough in Egypt. Archaeologists discovered the first pharaoh's tomb since Tutankhamun.
And in the sport, Daniel Dubois' defence of his IBA World Heavyweight title against Joseph Parker is off, as he's not feeling very well. In rugby, the Six Nations is back this weekend with the Calcutta Cup between England and Scotland. And darts, Gerwyn Price wins his first Premier League night for 2 years.
Hello there. Turning milder, but also wet and windy. There a chance we could see some sunshine heading into the weekend. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
can I just say there's one thing... I don't know whether to be excited or not about Bergerac making a comeback. There's a great piece this is in the Telegraph features, and it's John Nettles meeting the new Bergerac. And good on John Nettles for...
How does John feel about it?
See, I'm like you.
How's John feeling?
John would feel a bit pushed by the wayside.
No, he seems all right.
Or is he all right?
But look at that. That's a picture of Bergerac back in there. Look how young John Nettles.
Nettles in his heyday, isn't he?
But I used to love Bergerac.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if it's all the young people in my ears.
I know.
What's Bergerac?
I heard that. What's Bergerac?
Detective drama.
Yes.
If people don't know.
Set on the Channel Islands. It was brilliant. But I just don't know if it needs a Maybe it does.
I feel like
it does.
Yeah, but the thing is,
stuff could have a good reboot. You know?
But how many reboots do you see? I mean, do they really? Is there no creativity anymore? Can nobody come up with anything new?
Yeah.
I know. Let's remake this. You see, there's a new Back to the Future coming out. Did you see that?
Is there?
Yeah, there's a new Back to the Future. And
don't tell him that; he'll be so excited.
No, I'm not. I was never into Back to the Future.
Well, were you not?
Oh, were you not?
No.
Oh, well, that surprises me.
It does surprises me as well. We have to go back and watch the first one, and then Back to the Future, then watch that, and then anyway. But everything they make again.
Yeah. Why can't you just...
do something new?
Yeah, come up with something new. Though, the fact that John Nettles is back in this seems to...
Do you think...
be a bit of a...
You know what I do like when they do these things? Is sometimes you get a cameo, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
And they'll walk in. So maybe it would be a nice nod to Nettles if
does a
John
cameo.
comes in and just does a little cameo.
Actually, yeah, see that...
Drives past in the car.
That'd be very cool in the same car.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Oh, there you go. Time's gone by. Showing me age. All right, we'll see you later, Paul. In the meantime, let's have a look at the Prime Minister's Brexit reset, which charges on the Times reporting that Britain is set to offer a youth mobility scheme to European nations.
Well, the deal could bring tens of thousands of young EU workers and students to the UK for up to 3 years, whilst granting young Britons similar opportunities in Europe.
It's understood that if the scheme were implemented, there would be a cap on the number of young people allowed to enter Britain.
Well, that's despite the EU previously stating that mobility is not subject to a quota.
The government continues to stand by its previous position at the moment, which is to reject any such scheme, a spokesperson saying, "We do not have plans for a youth mobility agreement. We're committed to resetting the relationship with the EU to improve British people's security, safety and prosperity. We have been clear there will be no return to freedom of movement, the customs union or the single market."
Well, let's get the thoughts now. Political editor of The Spectator, Katie Balls, who joins us in the studio now. Good to see you, Katie. What do you make of this? It's been described as an Australian-style youth mobility scheme.
Well, I think what's interesting is you've had the UK government up until now really ruling this out as an idea.
Yes.
So you've had the talk of the big EU reset. We know that Keir Starmer wants closer relations with the EU. The question has always been, what is the UK government willing to give up in return to get, rid of various trade barriers, to have that closer relationship? And youth mobility has been something all the diplomats in the EU capitals talk about, but Number 10 have been pretty squeamish about it because they worry it sounds a bit like freedom of movement, and therefore it could play pretty badly to voters, and there could be a backlash. So I think it's seen as the most sensitive thing they could give up to get something. And of course, this isn't an on-the-record sense that they're going to do it, but I think it does show that there's a realisation that they are going to have to move on some potentially uncomfortable things to have that closer relationship.
I mean, it's interesting that there's been comparisons drawn to the Australia scheme, because it does beg the question, is it just a scheme in its own right, or is it a backdoor to full freedom of movement?
Exactly, and you can see within the story there's talk about a potential cap, which you mentioned, which I think is to try and allay concerns that this would just be limitless in the way that freedom of movement, of course, there is no cap on it. But, and also there's the age limit, so it's, under the age of 30, potentially. But it's obviously still potentially quite a large number of people. And the cap, if you look at it, it would be a smaller proportion coming from the EU than currently come from Australia. But you get to about paragraph 6 of the story and you already have the backlash from EU figures saying this does not sound generous enough, which does make it seem as though there'll be a pushback to try and either lift a cap altogether or widen out the scheme. So I still think it's potentially quite sticky for Keir Starmer if he does plan to do this.
Yeah, one of the stickiest issues, actually, is the health surcharges, isn't it?
Yes.
Use the NHS.
Yeah. and this idea that they would have to, if you do the youth mobility scheme, you'd have to pay a certain amount of money for the admin fees, for the health surcharge, which is a bit what they do in Australia.
It's about £2,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
For health surcharges, then a fee on top.
Yeah, and I think the question is, does the EU push back on that and say, oh, we need to be more generous? Because you already have having some figures saying the rhetoric is not positive enough from the UK government about our young Europeans coming over. There should be more positivity about this. But of course, Keir Starmer is looking at his political threat, the fact that you have Nigel Farage, Reform leading in various polls. And I think there are some in the Labour Party and the Cabinet who worry there could be a political backlash to something like this.
Do they? I wonder... Every political analyst looking at the government at the moment sort of seems to be saying, well, they've got to crack on and do what they want to do because they don't stand, as it currently stands, they don't have a hope in hell of getting in next time round. Well, will that thought be permeating Number 10 or not?
I think there is a thought that what they do have is quite a long time until the next election, so therefore there is an incentive to try and get out the tricky decisions now and then hope things improve. And I think that's why in Number 10 they're quite keen to move quite fast with the EU reset. So you bank any political pain and then they hope the prize is economic growth and then everyone feels a bit more wealthy by the time of the next election. So I think that's why they want to do that this year rather than closer to the election.
Right. That's interesting. Casey, good to see you.
Thank you.
You've got to let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/yoursay. Is it something we should look at? Is it just, you know, a step on the slippery slope?
Yeah, is it a backdoor back into the European Union? Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/yoursay.
Now, across the pond, the White House has cancelled a joint conference with President Zelenskyy, and that was with General Kellogg yesterday, after Donald Trump dubbed his Ukrainian counterpart a dictator.
Well, meanwhile, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has waded into the row, accusing Zelenskyy of being a fraud machine that feeds off the dead bodies of soldiers.
It all comes after Donald Trump said Russia is holding the cards in any peace talks, as it's taken a lot of territory.
Well, we're joined now by US political analyst Eric Ham. Good to see you this morning, Eric. And should we start with the words of Elon Musk, this continuing war of words in Washington towards President Zelenskyy?
Yeah, this war of words is actually escalating day by day, and we're continuing to see how Donald Trump and President Zelenskyy are each pushing back on each other. And this is all coming as Donald Trump is aggressively trying to strike a deal to somehow end this war in Ukraine. But clearly what we're seeing here is President Zelenskyy is making clear that if Ukraine does not have a seat at the table, there will be no deal between Ukraine and Russia.
It seems extraordinary, though, to try to broker a deal when you're saying things like Ukraine started the war and your right-hand man saying Zelensky's despised by the Ukrainian people and feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. I mean, it's hardly a neutral position for someone to be in a key negotiating position.
That's certainly true, and I think that's going to make it that much more difficult for the Trump administration to actually get a deal. We already see that President Zelenskyy is working feverishly to try to line up as much support throughout Europe as he can. But again, there cannot be any agreement on peace if, in fact, one of those key stakeholders does not agree. We do know that President Zelenskyy has certainly telegraphed that he wants a deal and he wants the United States to be a part of any agreement that's made. However, what we're seeing, though, is that President Zelenskyy has made clear they're not happy with the MOU on the minerals agreement that was provided to them. And in addition to that, we continue to see President Trump continue to go after President Zelenskyy in ways that, quite frankly, just simply aren't true.
Well, yes. Do you think President Trump actually believes what he's saying when he calls President Zelenskyy a dictator? Or do you think he is frustrated that Zelenskyy doesn't seem to be open to the deal that Russia and the US are brokering right now? And he's just saying these things to get a reaction, to get things moving. What's your thoughts on that?
I think every time he continues to double down on this disinformation campaign, it moves President Zelenskyy and Ukraine further and further away from the goalpost of actually trying to cut a deal. But we have seen Donald Trump actually do this with Canada, talking about the massive trade deficit that simply isn't true. And I think what we're seeing is not only is it bad policy, but it's also very dangerous because, again, this is misinformation, and Donald Trump is leading with that to try to get the outcome that he wants. But quite frankly, it isn't going to happen. And we're seeing that not only with the tariffs that haven't been implemented on Canada and Mexico, and now we're seeing it with the Trump administration as they try to actually negotiate an agreement to end the war in Ukraine.
What's happening in terms of his party in the States? I mean, the political reaction to all of this. Is everyone still backing Trump, or are there cracks appearing? I mean, certainly we've seen, over here, Nigel Farage, couch his words quite carefully, saying Zelensky's not a dictator. Trump, exaggerates in effect. He's being truthful but not always accurate.
Well, new polling data is out already, and it's showing that even with 1 month into his job, still in the honeymoon phase of this presidency, Donald Trump is already underwater with the polls. And that's not only with Democrats, but that's with voters of both the left and the right. And clearly what we're seeing here is they don't actually support what they're saying from Donald Trump, continuing to somehow suggest that President Zelenskyy is somehow illegitimate and that he actually started the war, when many people just don't read it that way.
Can I ask you about next week, when we've got President Macron meeting Donald Trump on Monday, I believe, and then you've got Keir Starmer meeting President Trump on Thursday, and we're hearing from President Macron that he's going to talk about, he's going to warn Trump not to be weak in the face of Russia, because he worries about the precedent it sets with China and Taiwan. If you allow Russia to get away with illegally invading Ukraine, then what sort of lessons are you giving to China in terms of Taiwan? Do you think that will have any impact on Mr. Trump?
No, it won't. And I think what we're seeing here is that President Trump has a massive disdain for the Western alliances that the United States has brokered and led for decades now. And I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is using, I think, this effort to try to end the war more as an opportunity to bring Russia in from the cold, as well as trying to get one of his signature campaign election outcomes, which is to end the war. But I think what we're going to see is the administration fall flat on its face if it somehow cannot find a way to get Zelenskyy there. Zelenskyy has made clear that he's pretty stubborn about this, and he's willing to fight for his nation. And in fact, I think we saw that at the Munich Security Conference last week, where you saw many who were actually unhappy with the comments and the speech that was made by Vice President J.D. Vance in comparison to what we saw from President Zelenskyy. The question, of course, is how far is Europe prepared to go and actually backing and standing with Ukraine?
Yeah, well, it looks like all the way, and it's going to be interesting to see how that resonates in the White House, isn't it? Eric, for now, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's the language. It's the language which is the problem. Whether he believes it all, everything that he's saying, I don't know. But then with the stuff that Elon Musk has then come out with, which is really harsh.
Yeah.
Zelenskyy feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to say. I can't see how it is in any way useful as a comment.
Or truthful. I mean, we're talking about the man who stood on the streets of Kyiv and was offered to be flown out by the US. Do you remember that? Right at the very beginning of this war. He said, don't get me out, bring me ammo. That's what I want. I want to fight, you know? Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say. It is this war of words that only appears to be escalating. It'll be very interesting to see what happens next, especially with this trip to Washington next week with President Macron and Keir Starmer.
I mean, war of words are fine. If it achieves something, if it achieves a good outcome, then fine. It's just very difficult to see how it does.
And that's what Eric Ham was saying, right? It pushes Ukraine further and further away from taking any sort of deal.
I think so. Right, it's 16 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other key stories this morning.
The The Israeli Defense Forces have said that Hamas has not released the body of hostage Shiri Babas, accusing the terror group of seriously violating the ceasefire agreement. 4 bodies were returned from Gaza to Israel, including 2 of her children, Kafir and Ariel. This comes after her husband was released earlier this month as part of the deal between the 2 sides.
The mother of a teenage soldier who took her own life has said no apology will bring her daughter back. Royal Artillery gunner Jaisley Beck was sexually assaulted and experienced relentless harassment during a time in the army. A coroner ruled a string of army failings contributed to her death in December 2021.
The Ministry of Justice have revealed that less than 30% of knife crime offenders end up in prison. That's the lowest figure in 10 years. Figures also show a rise in the number of suspended jail sentences as the overcrowded prisons crisis deepens.
And Gordon Ramsay has revealed that nearly 500 lucky cat figurines have been stolen from his new London restaurant. He told the Jonathan Ross show over £2,000 worth vanished during 1 week alone. I'm not remotely surprised at that, are you?
No, I'd be quite tempted to put one of those golden cats in my handbag.
They're just a little thing, sit in the middle of the table. You're going to bang it in your bag.
Yeah, and it happens all around the country. I mean, there's a restaurant, I won't name names, where they have little golden fish on the table.
Do they?
And it's really cute, yeah. And it's got little dots, red dots on it and things, and I just...
Have you got one?
Maybe accidentally put it in the handbag. Yeah, no, it's on my bookshelf. It's quite nice.
Ooh.
Tempting.
Light-fingered Costello.
I know it's naughty.
You see the temptation.
But clearly I'm not alone.
No, clearly not. We're a light-fingered nation.
Yes, we are.
I'm disgusted.
Especially with nice trinkets. Golden.
Anyway, as we just whisk Ellie off to confession, let's have a look at the weather for you with Honor.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're doing some more Bergerac reading?
Sorry, I'm just reading up about Bergerac and all this sort of thing. Looks quite good. No, it looks quite good. It's darker, apparently.
Oh, I'm quite up for that.
Reimagined.
Oh.
Damien Maloney plays the role.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm very interested.
I might give it a whirl. I don't know what it's on. I don't know what channel it's on. Anyway,
we'll find out. We'll find out. Do stay with us. Paul Coit is going to be here next with all the sport.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Inside Number 9, Stage/Fright. So Inside Number 9, massive cult BBC 2 show. One half of the League of Gentlemen, so Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith, they are the kind of creative geniuses behind all those sorts of shows. So it's weird, wonderful, macabre, sort of very, very black comedy. And this is their kind of farewell thank you to fans. It is such a niche show and such an extraordinary success already ticket-wise. It's virtually sold out. We're hoping it's going to actually extend. Stunning. So basically, it's 2 or 3 of their episodes mashed together. I haven't seen the show. Absolutely fine. So for me, it was actually just a revelation. Other friends have seen the shows and they were just ecstatically happy. The only new bit is an opening segment of about 10 minutes when the stage pulls back and we see seats facing up with a few people dotted around. It's the most fantastic play on terrible behaviour in theatre audiences. With one man getting increasingly annoyed and basically doing the things that we've possibly thought about but would never do, and all the misbehaviours meet gruesome ends. So don't try this at home. But, you know, certainly a couple of times you've been like, "Ugh." The rest of the show, the first half is based on Bernie Clifton's Dressing Room. It's 2 old-time comedians reunited, very melancholy. Second half is a very gothic-y kind of Grand Guignol, sort of schlocky horror, eyeballs coming out of the face, paintings moving, and then there's a show within rehearsals. There's a ghost, brilliant riffs on everything that's been going on in the West End, handheld camera scenes, which they're mocking, and pop stars cranked into major theatre productions.
I'm liking some of the satire you're describing here.
It's so much fun.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Time for the sports, 6:24. Morning, Paul Coyte.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, all right. How are you?
Is it an Ireland thing today? Is this what's going on?
Oh, the green.
For the Six Nations?
Mr. Stephen Dixon was in charge of colours this morning.
Ah.
Yes, I just said green.
But it would be very timely because there's a big rugby match going on tomorrow.
There is.
Yeah.
Well, there's 3. The Six Nations is back. But what's interesting is that Ireland will not be wearing green.
Oh, will they not?
They will be wearing white. So it's being played. So Wales versus Ireland. Wales, by the way, who are just having a shocker, and they've lost 14 games on the bounce, and it's just desperate for Wales at the moment. So Ireland, who...
So it's looking good for Ireland.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Matt Sherratt, who is an Englishman who's now taken over as an interim coach at the moment from. But the thing is, they're going to be wearing white. Do you have any idea why Ireland would be wearing white?
You want to be
normally it would always be green against red, but now they're going to be wearing white.
No idea.
No.
It's a colourblind thing. What? It's to help colourblind members of the crowd to distinguish between the red and the green. Because in the past, it's always been a little tricky, so they've now changed it, so they're going to be wearing white instead of green.
Well, fair enough.
There you go. It's
fair
true.
enough. Are there that many colourblind people watching? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a few.
I find colourblindness, is like weird, because you just can't you can't imagine it, can you?
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, with the game, is that if you are colourblind, it's very easy to be able to tell. It's the ones that are touching the ball down, are probably the Irish ones, and the ones that are on the floor complaining are going to be the Welsh ones. You know, it's just the way things are going at the moment. So anyway, we've had Warren Gatland, who was the coach there at Wales, and he was extremely successful, and then he left, and then he came back, and since he came back, everything has just collapsed. I mean, he's even blamed Margaret Thatcher for the reason that Wales aren't very good, all due to public schools, etc., going back years. But anyway, all we know is that Wales are not good, and Matt Sherratt is hoping to defy the odds with a win, but I think it's really going to defy the odds if they are. England are playing Scotland in the Calcutta Cup. Do you know why it's called the Calcutta Cup?
I sort of remember from last time. I remember you talking from last time, but I can't...
I was babbling on about it for ages. It's the 132nd one. It's because when it was originated, and it was in the army, and it was an English team, played a Scottish team, in India when they were in the army, and when it was obviously India was a British colony back in the day, and they played that there, and then that was how the Calcutta Cup originated. And so the cup was made, and then still they play for that. So all these years on, that's why.
So it's always England, Scotland for the Calcutta Cup?
Always, although within the Six Nations, see, there's all these little cups. I say little cups, I mean that respectfully, within the Six Nations. So England plays Scotland for the Calcutta Cup, so that's in there. And then you've got Italy versus France. They'll be playing for the Giuseppe Garibaldi Cup.
And what's
They've got their own cup. Am I boring you with the cups now? Are there too many cups?
Now,
I mean, too many cups spoiling the rugby broth?
Makes you fancy a biscuit.
I remember the Calcutta Cup because it's so pretty.
Yes.
It's got snakes around all of the outside. It's silver and really...
It's a bit like a big...
embellished.
Tea thing, a tea urn, isn't it?
It looks like a tea urn.
Yes.
But a really fancy one. And
yes.
Intricately designed. I love it, yeah. I'd be up for one of those. Oh, there it is.
There it is, look at that.
Yeah,
there
look at all the snake handles. That's so cool.
See, although it was damaged, I think this was about 30 years ago. Now, who was it? Was it Richard Hill, I think it was? They celebrated a little too much with the cup, damaged it and got in all sorts of trouble because it's a very expensive item.
Oh,
so
it's got an elephant on the top.
Yes, yeah, the whole Indian thing, nod to India, you see. Yeah.
So what's the Garibaldi?
The Garibaldi.
Like a massive biscuit.
It's a huge silver biscuit that they're playing for. So the Giuseppe Garibaldi trophy is because Giuseppe Garibaldi was born in Nice, Italian revolutionary. There's your link between Italy and France. So that's and also biscuits as well. So there we are. So Italy have won it twice, but it's expected, well, France are going to go to Rome and they're playing there.
OK.
And expected they will win.
What's up with Daniel Dubois?
Daniel Dubois, a fine boxer who you may remember knocked out Anthony Joshua recently. Do you remember that? So he holds the world... There's so many world titles now. He holds the IBA title. There's so many different titles because when Alexander Usyk vacated it because you've got to have so many fights under different belts instead of just having the undisputed. So it was given to Daniel Dubois. Beat AJ just recently, but now he's supposed to be fighting Joseph Parker in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. But this is really rare that he's pulled out ill. So it was a huge fight. Everybody was interested in it.
Well.
Yeah, exactly. So it was going to be an enormous fight for a title. Joseph Parker is still going to fight. So he is still going to fight Martin Bakole, who is based in Scotland. 33 fights, lost one, so it's not really that world title that he wanted to fight for. But it is rare that someone would just all of a sudden, 2 days on, where is he? Nobody knows. Actually, he's feeling a little under the weather, and then the fight's off.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah, there you go.
Right. Have we got time for Gerwyn Price?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, we should.
See, Gerwyn Price, former rugby player, professional rugby player, Welsh, and wore green because he was playing in Ireland yesterday. So there's Ireland versus Wales again, and ends up winning the Premier League of Darts. So well done. Although I say the win the Premier League of Darts, there's lots of different legs. So that happened in Dublin. There he is, the Welshman, because he always gets a terrible amount of stick from the crowd, and people awful. It all goes back a few years. And
is he the one they always boo him when he comes out?
That's right, and he hates it. And Gerwyn Price is a decent guy, but whenever he goes out, he's like this pantomime villain. And he's actually played darts before with ear protectors on, so he couldn't hear the boos. He can either play up to it, but he actually hates being the villain, but continues to be the villain. I think it's a little unfair. But anyway, he won last night, so well done, Gerwyn Price.
Well done.
Good on him. Yeah. All right, Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway. And if you want to be one of our 2 new winners, each with a new iPhone, shopping vouchers and £10,000 in tax-free cash, here are all of the details that you need.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
She's just humming the theme tune all the way through that.
I know. Well, this one, 5 days a week does to you.
Yeah.
All of the stings and the giveaway. Yeah, it gets in my head.
Oh, dear.
Da, 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 da.
Here you go. You don't win £1,000 for that, or even 10,000.
I know, it's a shame. We can't win, but you can.
Yeah.
So make sure you get involved.
Give it a whirl. Right, we've got the papers heading away in just a minute with Alex Dyke and Scarlett Maguire.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled Stena Line sailings this morning between Cairn Ryan and Belfast because of poor weather conditions. Parking lorries up at Castle Kennedy Airfield near to the A75. In Rondacon and Taff, the A473 is closed in both directions at Church Village because of an accident last night. In Suffolk, the A14 is closed westbound from junction 50 at Stow Upland to 49 at Stowmarket after an accident overnight. In London, the A111 is blocked by an accident on Chase Side by Southgate Circus after an accident. A number of buses are diverting as a result. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking 10 minutes in delays approaching the M25 because of roadworks, and there are delays to Whitelink sailings to and from the Isle of Wight between Portsmouth and Fishbourne because of the weather. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
The Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 6:36. Let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages.
The Times says Britain will offer European countries a youth mobility scheme as part of Sir Keir Starmer's reset with Brussels.
The Eye says the Prime Minister is under pressure to explain how the government will boost the defence budget.
The Mail says senior figures from the arts have backed a Daily Mail campaign to protect Britain's creative industries from the threat of AI.
The Sun says the former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards still hasn't paid back the £200,000 that he was paid by the broadcaster following his arrest.
And the Daily Star says lucky southerners will be parading around in their budgie smugglers, that's their swimming trunks to you and me, while those up north face a bit of snow.
Well, joining us now to go through what's making the news this morning is former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and the broadcaster Alex Dyke. Very good morning to both of you. And Scarlett, should we start with Elon Musk?
We start with Elon Musk. Honestly, so Donald Trump, President of the United States, has been going mad about how awful Zelenskyy, head of Ukraine, is, because Zelenskyy is cross that Donald Trump is leaving Ukraine out of the peace talks and is just dealing with Putin, and so Donald Trump started saying that Zelenskyy is a dictator and is very unpopular, which is wrong. Can I say that he says that he has 4% support when he has actually 57% support? But Elon Musk, in his incredible way, has gone in and said Trump is absolutely right. He's a despised dictator, and he is a massive graft machine feeding off the dead bodies of Ukrainian soldiers. I mean, you know, we're supposed to be trying to get towards a peace deal. To have a peace deal that works, we need the Ukrainians. I mean, actually, I think they should be at the table. Frankly, it is their country that has been...
Seems very hard not to.
I know. And they've started trying to completely change the whole narrative that actually it was the Ukrainians' fault that the war started when... We all know that Russia came in and entered it, and that actually, you know, they could have had peace at any time. And of course, it's terrible. I mean, that war is absolutely terrible, and it's grinding down the men of Ukraine who are there fighting. But I just think, I mean, Musk, as we said, he is a rampaging toddler with absolutely no idea of the facts. I mean, he just causes trouble.
And Alex playing straight into Putin's hands.
Wow. Could this not be strategic? Could this not be Trump finding an olive branch for Putin, making him... Because what do they say in war? Always leave a bridge so that your enemy can retreat. With dignity. I don't know. I think Trump is fed up with foreign aid, and I think he might want to distance himself a little bit, show that he's completely different to Biden, and there may be a method to this madness.
But you think it is madness?
You're all looking at me stunned.
Well, because look, there's some truth in what you say in terms of if you are doing it strategically, but with the things that Musk is saying is, you can't row back from that. Feeding off the bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers.
No,
you can't row back from that.
No, and that is awful. But I think Elon Musk, now that he's buddied up with Trump in such a way, he doesn't care. He's got more money than any of us, and he's out of control. And he's got no one to rein him back in. Probably the only person he would listen to is Trump, and Trump, for some reason, doesn't want to do it yet.
But also, you say they're fed up with foreign aid, right? I mean, Trump behaves as though only America has been supporting Ukraine. I mean, actually... If you put Europe together, it is about the same. Europe has given about the same. And now, the big thing, and this isn't just Trump, this is the people in Washington, are saying, well, the problem with Zelenskyy is he's not going to give us these rare minerals that we want, and we want the $500 billion dollars worth of minerals there. Since when do you... America says, we're supporting Europe, and then they go, oh, no, we want payback, and we want your minerals.
But America's always been about the dollar. It's always been, throughout history, no one has been more monetised than the United States of America. But I do think that the Trump and the Elon relationship will end in tears.
Oh, it'll be like two Tyrannosaurus Rexes, you know, go. Ooh. I mean, the whole of the earth will be as they fight it out. Of course.
What worries me about this is the fact that it's certainly pitting the United States against the rest of NATO.
Yes.
Isn't it? And
on purpose.
And that will be strategic, and you can understand Trump's position on that. They've paying so much money, and European nations aren't paying their fair whack, which is an understandable position to be annoyed about. But it's going to be. It leaves us, the UK, in a very difficult position.
Yeah. It does leave us in a difficult position that, Keir Starmer is saying that he knows he's got to up the defence budget. There is a real problem in Britain, there is no money, right? So to up the defence budget, he's got to take money from other places. And, all the other departments are, screaming for money and cut to the bone. So there is that problem. But then, what's so incredible is he then talks about sending peacekeepers. The Russians go, we're not going to have peacekeepers. Well, if Trump is going to give a fifth of Ukraine to Russia, which looks as a minimum, there has to be a line between. And if Russia goes, no, we're not going to have peacekeepers, it's like saying, well, we'll just quietly go in there then. The whole thing is very difficult.
Well, maybe there is a strategy, Alex, and we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, the Mail has started a campaign against AI.
They've dedicated, well, obviously it's the front page. There's 6 pages in the Mail about this today. And apparently what's behind this is artists in all sorts of fields are not going to be protective. And they want to improve. It's quite a complicated story in many ways. They want to improve AI, and this has been compared. The Mail have compared this to, it's like burglars taking anything from your home unless you stick a note on the front door to say, please don't come into my house. And this could be absolutely huge for musicians and artists from all walks of life. And this is a huge campaign in the Mail today, and I think this is only going to gather steam. At the moment, they've got a few celebrities who've gone on this bandwagon, but I think it's going to get bigger. I've heard Paul McCartney talking about this recently. So this is about protecting your rights if you're an artist, maybe a famous writer or a musician or something like that.
I think it's really, really important, because the problem with this government is they're saying AI is more important than the individual artists. And as Alex says, you have to say, don't take it, but nobody quite knows how to do that. And so they take novels and just AI eats it up and then they can spit it out. And AI is generated by cannibalising other people's work and then spitting it out.
Isn't it? They can scrape whatever they like.
Yes.
Basically, you would be sweeping away 300 years of copyright, and there's a reason we have copyright. So 300 years of it could be swept away because of AI.
It does seem very odd, but it's getting the balance right, because we need to embrace AI, because it is the future. We want to be at the forefront of that, don't we? We're going to ride the wave, but it's about how you do that whilst protecting everything else.
The Daily Mail is I very rarely say this, is completely right that actually the artists are not protected. So if it goes on the way it is, you just say, oh, why don't you write a musical about this? Why don't you write a novel about this? And actually the whole creative instinct of people who, somebody like the playwright James Graham, who he spends his life just thinking about plays and writing them. It just stymies it.
You should get a proper job.
But we're leaders in this, aren't we? One thing Britain has been great with throughout history is we have the best writers, we have the best musicians, we have the best artists.
Yeah.
So this is very important for Britain.
There need to be protections
Oh, yeah.
in place, don't there?
Yeah, it really is.
Well, you two stay where you are. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Storm Coral will be affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean, bringing in a cold plume, so below average temperatures. These are set to affect Athens, parts of Santorini, so feeling cold here. But as we move our way further west, milder, yes, but some unsettled weather on the cards. Some rain affecting Nice, Barcelona, also parts of Portugal. But Madeira and Tenerife staying largely dry, and that remains the way into next week. Also the best of the temperatures, and temperatures improving across Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs, you know. Remember, they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin, and the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak, friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Scarlett Maguire and Alex Dyke taking us through the papers this morning. Let's head to the Mirror, Scarlett, where doctors have found that loads of them apparently passed a vital exam, only it turned out they didn't.
I know, this is a terrible...
worrying, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, I think this is a terrible story. I was thinking of the junior doctors taking their exam. 300 of them have been given the wrong results. 220 have been told they passed when they didn't. So presumably they've been put on the ward or whatever. And obviously most people think, oh, God,
should we have unqualified doctors? But one would think it was like this. But actually, I feel terribly sorry for these doctors who, you know, sweated and sweated, took the exam, think that they're OK, and now
I feel a bit sorry for the patients. Yeah. Gosh. What do you make of it, Alex?
Well, I think just when you thought there was nothing new to worry about within the NHS, now we find out that after 7 years of training to become a junior doctor, a big wodge of them should never have been on the ward anyway. I mean, I don't know how far this has gone, but it doesn't look great, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't. Maybe they'll just learn on the job.
Oh, yeah, and I mean...
Let's hope
fingers
so.
crossed.
Well, what we're hoping is that they failed by 5% or something like that, and they just, you know, their Latin wasn't up to it. But I mean...
Oh, they know they're from their elbow.
But what's so awful about it is that this is... I mean, this didn't happen yesterday, right? This happened... I mean, it's been... They've only found out about it about...
Oh, years ago, is it?
Not years, but last year. I mean, it is difficult.
Well, can we cheer ourselves up then in our last couple of minutes?
Yes, very good.
With a bit of Bond.
Well, I don't know if this will cheer you up.
Well, I'm not overly worried.
I am.
You're not?
No.
I am alarmed, and I'm not even...
I'm with Ellie.
Well, basically, we know the people behind Bond are the Broccoli family. And for the last 30 years, Cubby Broccoli's daughter, Barbara, and her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, have been looking after the franchise and done very well with it. When you think of what a great Bond Daniel Craig was.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't had a new movie for 4 years, and now it looks like Amazon are going to take over the helm, and apparently relations are strained between Barbara and Stephen and Amazon, which to me sounds like they've, even though it's their baby, they've been pushed aside. So they've decided to step back. So now this new guy, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, is asking you who you would like to be the next 007. One name in the papers is Tom Cruise. But he's American. But
no.
Well,
this is what worries me about Amazon having it, though. It's going to become really Americanised.
Yeah, or very, very woke. I mean, are we going to have a woman playing James Bond?
I don't know if Jeff Bezos is that woke, is he?
Well, no, but Amazon are quite woke, aren't
they? No, they were woke when it was trendy to be woke, and now that we've got Trump in the White House, then they're not going to be woke at all. I mean, it's the Americanisation I worry about, and I mean, I do know somebody else who was in for it, who is Ian Fleming's great nephew, who would have kept it in Britain, right?
It should be kept in Britain,
and it's. I mean, you know, I mean, the Broccolis. They were American. Oh, she is American. But, I mean, they were based in Britain. And we want it to stay British.
They'll keep it at Pinewood.
You know what?
Right time. Sorry,
had a great idea too, Stephen.
Save it for the next hour. Thanks, you two. Let's get a check on the weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled Orkney ferry sailings this morning between North Hoy and both Stromness and Grahamsay because of poor weather conditions. Some cancelled Stena Line sailings too between Cairnryan and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. Also some cancelled Irish ferry sailings between Holyhead and Dublin because of the weather. On the M6 in the West Midlands, the inside lanes closed northbound just after Junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, after an accident causing delays. In Suffolk, the A14 is closed westbound between Junctions 50 and 49 from Stow Upland to Stowmarket after an accident overnight. In Rhondda and Taff, the A473 is closed at Church Village south of Pontypridd after an accident. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking a quarter of an hour in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks, and trains have been stopped between Eastbourne and Hastings because of a signalling problem.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're giving you not one, but two chances to win this month, with two prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Could we be accepting freedom of movement with the European Union?
Government is set to offer EU countries a youth mobility scheme as part of Brexit reset talks with the bloc.
Well, the Australian-style agreement could see tens of thousands of youngsters living and working here.
Elon Musk echoes Donald Trump. The world's richest man claims President Zelenskyy is feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. That's as our Foreign Secretary David Lammy warns Russia doesn't have the appetite for peace.
Well, it comes as the Washington war of words intensifies in all of this. Nigel Farage has had his say.
You should always take everything Donald Trump says seriously.
you shouldn't always take things that Donald Trump says absolutely literally. Zelenskyy is not a dictator, but it's only right and proper that Ukrainians have a timeline for elections.
Elsewhere, South Wales Police plans to use facial recognition cameras across Cardiff during the Six Nations. Are we heading towards an Orwellian society?
There's a new mission for the makers of James Bond as Amazon takes creative control of the 007 franchise.
A huge breakthrough in Egypt. Archaeologists discover the first pharaoh's tomb since Tutankhamun.
And in the sport, Daniel Dubois' defence of his IBA World Heavyweight title against Joseph Parker is now off, as he's not feeling very well. In rugby, the Six Nations is back this weekend. The Calcutta Cup between England and Wales. I'll say that again. Between England and Scotland, Wales will play Ireland. That's not the Calcutta Cup. And in darts, a win for Wales in Ireland as Gerwyn Price wins his very first Premier League of darts night in 2 years.
Hello there. Turning milder, but also wet and windy. There's a chance we could see some sunshine heading into the weekend. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Some positive news on the Pope.
Oh, yeah.
This morning.
I'm very worried about the Pope, you know.
There's been a lot of concern about the Pope. He's 88.
88, and he's been in really poor health the last 2 years.
Yeah, a bad couple of years. He's been in hospital with pneumonia and what have you. Apparently he's improving.
Oh, that's good.
So he's not on a ventilator. He's taking calls, which is all very positive. And one Archbishop, Giuseppe Satiriano, has said the Pope is a fighter and will win this battle.
Aww.
So that's some positive news this morning.
That is some positive news. Do you know what? I've been having a nice update there's one of the bosses here is also Catholic. I'm Catholic. So we've been checking in on each other each day, just checking how the Pope is. And he told me yesterday he was up and eating his breakfast.
How did he know that?
Well, I don't know. I said, how did you know that? But apparently he knew. So he was having his breakfast yesterday, and now you're telling me he's looking good. So that's a relief.
It's positive. It's positive.
He's 88. It's still a good age, I think.
Oh, it is.
Still to a good 10 years, even.
Oh, well...
I'm going to say it, we've got to be full of hope.
OK, full of hope
for
the Pope.
Francesco, I do like him.
Yeah. Oh, Francesco, is that what you call him? You go all Italian?
Well, yeah, I think would be the Italian. Pope Francis, Francesco. Yeah, very nice. Anyway, we're wishing him the best.
Yes,
From
we
everyone
are.
at GB News, if he is watching, we're wishing him well.
Well, he might be. You never know. Right, the Prime Minister's Brexit reset. I've heard all about this over the last few weeks. Anyway, it's charging on. But The Times is saying this morning that Britain is set to offer a youth mobility scheme to European nations.
Yes, the deal could bring tens of thousands of young EU workers and students to the UK for up to 3 years, whilst granting young Britons similar opportunities in Europe.
Well, it's thought that if the scheme were implemented, then there could be a cap on the number of young people allowed to come to Britain.
But that's despite the EU previously stating that mobility is not subject to a quota.
Meanwhile, the government continues to stand by its previous position, which is to say it's not happening, saying we don't have any plans for a youth mobility agreement. We're committed to resetting the relationship with the EU to improve British people's security, safety and prosperity. We have been clear there will be no return to the freedom of movement, the customs union or the single market.
Well, let's speak now to political editor of The Spectator, Katie Balls, who joins us in the studio. Good to see you, Katie. And what is all this confusion about? Is there going to be freedom of movement with the EU? Is there going to be a scheme or not?
I think it's all about what you might call it. You have these very specific red lines from the UK government, no return to freedom of movement, no customs union, for example, on trade. But you can see a world where if they manage to reset the relationship, probably at the summit in May, you could have things that look a little bit like a customs union, look a little bit like freedom of movement for young people, but they'll probably call it something else and hope they can get away with it. And therefore, I think we're into semantics. And it's quite clear on the question of freedom of movement that one of the big asks from the EU and from EU leaders is that they want to have something like a youth mobility scheme where young Europeans can come to the UK. And that is something that you keep hearing from all the ambassadors, but it's something that makes Number 10 nervous because they worry there'll be a political backlash and it will start to look like freedom of movement through the back door.
Why is there this obsession with freedom of movement for young people? Anyway, why can't they just follow the same rules as the rest of us?
Well, I think there's a feeling in Europe that if the UK wants to get something back from them, so, fewer checks when it comes to the trading relationship, they want to restore some of the things they liked about the UK being in the EU. And one was, easy travel, and they're not going to get there for everyone, so they're going to focus on the young. So I think that at the moment they clearly don't like the system, which is of being treated the same. Now, it's being compared to the Australian model, whereby, young Australians find it easier to come to the UK right now than EU youth.
How would it work for young people coming here? What are we hearing?
So I think that you can see in the briefing the idea there'd be a cap on it. So there would be a limit to the number of Europeans who could come over. And also there would be some fees attached. So there would be this NHS surcharge that you'd have to pay and potentially add admin fees for the process of doing it. So it wouldn't be cost-free. But you can also already hear European sources saying, hang on a minute, this seems a bit limited. We don't want a cap. Should there really be fees? So there is a chance that what the government proposes as a compromise then has to become something much broader. And that's at the same time that Keir Starmer's worried about immigration numbers and the fact that Reform and Nigel Farage's party is now ahead of Labour in lots of polls.
I was going to say, the idea of anyone coming to this country at the moment is just so negative. Just when you look at these massive immigration numbers, the net migration figures, legal and illegal. I mean, the legal figures are the worst ones anyway, in terms of that hitting that nearly a million mark. There's just no appetite for it, is it, amongst the voters in the UK?
Well, I think even within the Labour Party, there are worries about agreeing to something like this, because you speak to Labour MPs where reform is the main threat in their seat, particularly in parts of the north, and they worry that something like this is going to play badly to their voters and help the other parties. And therefore, I think even though Labour is very much a pro-EU party, there's not many figures, MPs who back Brexit within the Labour Party. This is not something which I think would be cost-free for Keir Starmer. But one of the reasons they want to do it quite soon is almost to get the political pain done and then get to a point where nearer the election you potentially have economic growth as a result of the closer, ties. That would be what they would claim the win would be. So do it a long time before the next election, but it's still risky.
Can I ask you about film studios? Because we were talking to Lisa Nandy yesterday, weren't we, the Culture Secretary? But this hasn't actually been picked up that much in the press, and that is that 40% business rates relief is going to be rolled out for film studios in the UK. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is obviously being packaged as part of Rachel Reeves's big plan for growth. The fact that this Labour government likes to say its number one mission is growth, despite taking various measures in the budget, which seems to suggest other things, other priority when they're raising taxes. But I think the idea is for the UK to compete with lots of these other countries, and the UK is already a leader on some of this. Having this relief is going to bring investment, companies over here. But of course, you are going to have some people looking at this and saying, well, look at the hospitality industry at the moment on its knees. Look how difficult pubs are finding it. Is there going to be similar treatment? And I think when you think about the tricky place Rachel Reeves finds herself in terms of her headroom, does she even have it at the moment? It's hard to see this being offered around too widely. So I think some people feel as though they are missing out on it.
It's one of those things where it's the optics now, isn't it? Because there is a sense in 40% tax relief for making films. Because it does bring in a lot of money, it's big revenue, it will make a big difference to the economy. But we are a country where small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they're the ones saying, a third of them at least, saying we're going to have to shut down in the wake of all of this.
Exactly, and I think you can make the argument that this is good for the country overall if you get the investment. But I think there is just a sense at the moment, because of some of the decisions Labour have taken early on, because of that budget, which saw, despite all this talk about growth, more strain put on businesses, small businesses having more costs to employ individuals. I think there is just a sense that for lots of people that this Labour government is not on their side when it comes to small business owners, despite the rhetoric. And obviously seeing that big businesses and big companies get breaks and struggling yourself does make people feel quite hard done by.
OK. Katie Balls, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Now, across the pond, and the White House cancelled yesterday a news conference with President Zelenskyy and General Kellogg after they had a meeting in Ukraine. There's been a bit of a falling out, it would seem, between General Kellogg and Donald Trump, actually. But Donald Trump, as you know, has called President Zelenskyy a dictator.
Well, meanwhile, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has waded in on this row, accusing Zelenskyy of being a fraud machine that feeds off the dead bodies of his soldiers.
It all comes after Donald Trump stated that Russia holds the cards in any peace talks, as the country has taken a lot of territory.
Well, we're joined now by former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. And Philip, what do you make of this escalating war of words between Washington and Zelenskyy?
There's no real logic behind the statements that are coming out from Donald Trump, Elon Musk and the rest of the team. You know, it is almost 180-degree change in what they were saying only a couple of weeks ago, and the words are directly out of the Russian playbook. Now, it's having an effect, and part of that effect is what Donald Trump wants to do, and he uses shock tactics. You know, in his book, The Art of the Deal, he talks about these sorts of tactics in dealing with things, but we don't have enough information to know whether he is completely serious about everything that he's saying, or he's just using this as a tactical negotiating point. And that's why reacting to it immediately is something that I don't think we should be doing, and I think President Zelenskyy is playing the game very, very carefully indeed and very cleverly.
Yeah, he's not criticising Trump directly, which is a clever move. But one thing it does, I mean, whether we sort of react to it quickly or not, what it does seem to be doing is drawing a substantial dividing line between the United States and the rest of Europe on this issue. Now, that's problematic, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. It's drawing not just a dividing line between the United States and the rest of Europe, and I'd argue the rest of the world as well. But it's emboldening Vladimir Putin, and Putin will exploit this. You know, Donald Trump, a lot of his statements, he's suggesting that the deal is all down to territory. The Russians. Yes, territory is a factor, but it's down to Ukraine's actual existence. It's down to nationality. Vladimir Putin doesn't see the Ukrainians as having the right to have a separate country. So they're coming at things from slightly different perspectives. It seems that Trump is angry in a petulant way that the Ukrainians didn't sign over 50% of the profits from the rare earth metals at the Munich Security Conference, whenever a memorandum was just shoved in front of Zelenskyy and he refused to sign it there and then. And rare earth metals are a big factor for the Americans. And this ties in with the relationship with China. So there's the reach of this is huge. China owns 90% of the rare earth metal mines around the world, of the economic ones. America is so worried about the supply of rare earth metals for its weapons systems that their Department of Defense is opening non-economic mines to give them access to stocks of rare earth metals should they need them for US weapon systems. And a lot of this ties in with trying to break Russia's growing relationship with China. There's a lot more playing out behind closed doors.
And that's the concern of President Macron. He's going to Washington next week to meet President Trump, and Sir Keir Starmer will be there on Thursday, as well as 2 visits next week. But President Macron is going to warn exactly that if you concede to Russia in this way over Ukraine, what example, what lesson are you giving to China in terms of Taiwan?
Oh, if Russia walks away with territory from Ukraine and Trump is backing him, Xi Jinping will attack Taiwan, and we will see a Southeast Asian pivot in global conflict that will make the economic shock that we suffered 3 years ago when Russia reinvaded Ukraine seem like a minor blip. The impact that would have on global trade, global business is unimaginable at the moment.
There may be people saying, why do we care about Taiwan? Is it anything to do with us? But actually, it all falls down to industry, doesn't it? And things like computer chips, which Taiwan makes 90-odd% of them in the world. And that is all crucial in terms of international trade and whether that falls in the hands of China.
Yeah, well, it's industry and trade. You know, we do not sit in isolation in the United Kingdom, manufacturing everything that we need at home in the cheap prices that people want to buy in the shops, and our businesses that are running out of the City of London and replicated in Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Belfast, and all the rest of it are not isolated and just focused on internal markets. They're focused on global markets, and therefore, our pensions are invested globally. Everything is linked globally, and therefore, if you get an impact on what's going on in the Middle East with oil prices, or worse, what could happen to trade that goes through from Southeast Asia, then that would have a massive economic shock and almost destroy the foundations that most of our economy is based on. Rachel Reeves looking for growth, you wouldn't have a hope in hell if Xi Jinping goes into Taiwan.
OK. Philip, thanks for that cheery note.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thanks for your analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, at 16 minutes past 7, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Hamas will pay for not releasing the body of Shiri Babas, accusing the terror group of seriously violating the ceasefire agreement. 4 bodies were returned from Gaza to Israel, including her 2 children and an elderly peace activist, but the body purporting to be hers was unidentifiable. It comes after her husband was released earlier this month as part of the deal between the 2 sides.
The heartbroken mother of a teenage soldier who took her own life has said no apology will bring her daughter back. Royal Artillery gunner Jaisley Beck was sexually assaulted and experienced relentless harassment during her time in the army. A coroner ruled a string of army failings contributed to her death back in December 2021.
An investigation's underway after a man died following his arrest by Border Force officers at Manchester Airport. Officials say the man was detained for displaying unusual behaviour and was moved into a holding area where he fell ill. The Home Office has referred the case to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which is now leading the inquiry.
And finally, Gordon Ramsay has revealed that nearly 500 Lucky Cat figurines have been stolen from his new London restaurant. The chef told the Jonathan Ross Show that over £2,000 worth vanished during the first week alone. Now, I would just like to defend myself.
Oh, here we go.
Because I did admit earlier that I
Nicked
had
things.
Accidentally procured
pilfered
a fish, a little golden fish from a restaurant, which shall remain nameless, and it ended up in my handbag and now on my bookshelf. But I have just noticed on Google that the fish actually does say stolen from the name of the restaurant.
So
on
you think
fish.
it's a gimmick?
It's a gimmick. They want us to do that. Now, I don't know if...
Your Honour.
Yes. Well, I don't know if Gordon Ramsay wants you to steal his lucky cats, but the fish definitely is, needed to be stolen. Procured.
You're just, honestly, when you know the saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
It does, yeah, anyway. I think they're expecting it, is all I'm saying.
All right, I'm just checking all my things are still here.
You're safe, don't worry.
All right, let's have a look at the weather for you with Honour.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland, and a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, time for the Great British Giveaway. You could be one of 2 new winners, each winning a new iPhone, shopping vouchers, 500 quid's worth, and £10,000 in cold hard cash. Here's how you enter.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway. With 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. Now, do stay with us. Still to come, we're asking, are we heading towards an Orwellian state with the increased use of facial recognition technology? We're going to debate that next.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One former Royal Marine has just set up a state-of-the-art new fitness brand which combines fitness, dating, clubbing. It's all in a very unique experience.
Yes, Will McLaren and co-founder Toby Spooner have managed to fuse well-being, dating and what they call community building in their new full-day event, Metrics, which also includes high-intensity workouts. Will and Toby are joining us now in the studio.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, gents. Thank you for joining us. I'm very interested in this because all I seem to see at the minute is high rocks. But from what I've read about Metrics, this seems like the new upgraded version. What can you tell us about it? Tell our viewers all about Metrics.
Well, it is a fitness competition, but we are combining the music and production element. Also, we want it to be quite a social event as well. So we want people to come, meet each other and have a great day out.
So what does that actually mean? Tell us a little bit more in detail. Toby, just tell us a little bit about what's involved.
So, in short, it's an immersive fitness competition.
Yeah.
So you can do a partner workout, you can bring a friend, or we can actually make people. So we're adding that dating element.
Well, it was Valentine's yesterday.
Precisely,
so
right.
is this going to be the new Tinder? People going along to Metrics and meeting their future partner?
Well, exactly that. So we've done a load of research into it, and what we've found is that exercise is slowly becoming more of a dating scene.
So is it, I assume, some behind the scenes of what metrics will look like? Because it's still to start, isn't it? Is it big March it begins?
Yeah, so the 1st and 2nd of March, so it's in 2 weeks, at a magazine in North Greenwich.
We've known each other for a fair while, but we kind of like put our heads together. So we've worked in fitness for years, and we found that like music really drives performance. And people love music. People will come to our classes, they'll come away and they'll say, music was so good. And it just elevates the experience. We said, how can we put this on a scale like tenfold?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, it's 7:26, and Cardiff have announced an expansion of live facial recognition, which is going to turn the area into a zone of biometric surveillance.
Well, critics argue that this technology violates privacy while simultaneously creating a nation of suspects.
So, could this lead to an Orwellian-type future, or is it a necessary tool for law enforcement in this day and age?
Well, we're joined now by former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley and Head of Research and Investigations at Big Brother Watch, Jake Herford. Good to see you both this morning. Peter Blexley, let's start with you. Would you like to see more of this AI facial recognition technology being used to tackle crime?
Most definitely. If you visit any city throughout the UK, then your face, your image will be captured many hundreds of times during that day on CCTV systems, whether they be state-owned, local authority-owned, or privately operated systems. And we accept that as part and parcel of life, everyday life in the 21st century. This AI technology is essentially an extension of CCTV equipment, whereby within less than a second, the technology will be able to capture your image, compare it to a list of wanted people that are wanted for very serious crimes of violence, dishonesty, and much more. And in that instant, identify if that person is wanted, and thereby officers can be deployed and arrest those people. That's a good thing. That's how it's been used. A quick word of caution. Parliament have been very slow to create a regulatory framework. In other words, there aren't sufficient laws covering this, and there needs to be, so that the police will act lawfully, and we know how they will not only capture, but retain and store our images.
Yeah, that does need to be looked at, admittedly. But Jake Herford, even with that in place, would you be happy?
Absolutely not. And Peter's right to recognise that MPs have never voted on this in the House of Commons. Police are completely operating in the grey. But this is going to make Cardiff a zone of suspicion of surveillance. None of us would be happy to give our IDs over, be fingerprinted to enter the city centre. That's effectively what's happening. Your face print is as unique as giving your ID or as a fingerprint, and no one would accept a ring of steel around Cardiff city centre having to give your ID just to go shopping or go to the bar or watch the rugby. That's what's going to be happening, and it's incredibly concerning for privacy.
Peter?
I think you'll find, Jake, that in years to come, quite possibly, we might have to do exactly that if we're going to go into areas that are faced by an increasing terrorism threat, for example. And I would have no qualms whatsoever about providing ID, giving a digital fingerprint, or having my facial image captured, because I'm law-abiding. I want to protect other law-abiding people. And what I really want is people who break the law, people who are on the run, people who are wanted. I want them captured, put in handcuffs, and placed in a cell.
I mean, sorry.
No, Jake, please
I mean,
do.
if you've got to live in an area where you have to give ID at police checkpoints to go down the road, I mean, we're talking at cross purposes here. That's Chinese-style surveillance, restricting where people go minute by minute. Completely unbelievable that Britain will ever be a papers police society in that way. And you talk about people being arrested. Do you know when the last arrest at a sporting event with a live facial recognition deployment in South Wales was? 2022. They haven't made one in 3 years, a sport event using this technology, so it really isn't stopping people on the run in South Wales.
Well, unless they're not heading to the area, Jake. I mean, it boils down to the argument, doesn't it? If you haven't done anything wrong, what have you got to fear?
For me, I think there's a huge chance of this going wrong. Big Brother Watch is currently backing a legal case with a gentleman who's suing the Met, someone who works against knife crime, who's misidentified and held by the police for quite a while near London Bridge. It wasn't him on the camera got it wrong. And if you're using this at a mass scale, you're going to have these misidentifications happen at a more and more frequent basis. We see this technology used in shops like Home Bargains, Sports Direct, Southern Co-op by a company called FaceWatch. Big Brother Watch has people coming to us every single week saying they've been misidentified. So if we're going to deploy this in every city centre, we're going to get misidentifications day after day after day. And this won't just be suspicion of surveillance. It'll be suspicion of surveillance, meaning loads of people getting stopped for no good reason by the police.
Does misidentification worry you, Peter Blexley?
The technology is advancing every single day of the week. And with each advancement, it's getting better, more accurate, and therefore more efficient. It has taken a considerable number of wanted, dangerous, violent people off the streets, and for that I'm delighted. And I would also commend the Met Police and South Wales Police, who have basically had to roll out this technology with no assistance whatsoever from Parliament. It's Parliament that are dragging their heels. It's Parliament that needs to get its act together, and it's Parliament that needs to build in whatever protections are needed.
OK. Peter, Jake, we've got to leave it there, but good to talk to you both this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, you will have an opinion. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/yoursay.
Still to come for you, Paul Coyte's going to have all your sport. That's coming up in just a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled Orkney ferry sailings between North Hoy and both Stromness and Grahamsay this morning because of poor weather conditions. Some cancelled Stena Line sailings too between Cairn Ryan and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. And there are some cancelled Irish ferry sailings between Holyhead and Dublin. Now in Fermanagh, the A35 is closed each way along Pettigo Road at Tullyhomon because of a fallen tree. In Suffolk, the A14 is closed westbound between junctions 50 and 49 from Stow Upland to Stowmarket after an accident overnight, with delays through Stowmarket as you divert. On the M25, there are clockwise queues on the exit at junction 2 for the A2 because of an accident on the roundabout there. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking a quarter of an hour in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
"7:35, Paul's here, good morning.
Good morning.
What's going on with Mr. Arne Slot?
Arne Slot, the Liverpool manager, they are top of the league at the moment,
Yes.
and they will be playing Manchester City on Sunday, which should be a ding-dong, Stephen.
It should be.
It should be a ding-dong, but Arne Slot has been talking about Darwin Núñez. Now, Darwin Núñez missed a very simple chance against Aston Villa, which would have given Liverpool the win in the week. So, you know, sometimes it happens.
This was his 5-yarder, wasn't it?
It was 5. It was pretty poor. Yeah. You put it this way, you should really have no trouble you know, to score. But he did. But instead of fighting on and continuing, being like a lot of Premier League very rich footballers, he got the ump. And Arne Slot actually dug him out in public, and this is what he had to say about Darwin Núñez yesterday.
There's missed chances that I can accept, but what was a bit harder for me to accept, that his behavior after that chance, and with behavior I mean, I think it got too much in his head, where he wasn't the usual Darwin that works his off and makes sure he helps the team. I think he was too disappointed after him missing that chance, and maybe we will never know, we will never find out. That's why he was just a fraction short.
He worked his what off? I couldn't quite. It was bleeped. I have no idea what the word was.
No, but I tell you what, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's because if you can change that culture a little bit, where they're slightly less diva-ish, then that's not a bad thing, is it?
The thing is, you have to be a really good manager. And I've spoken to so many managers about this. I'm saying, what's the most important thing? Is it to be a true football man? Is it about tactics? Is it the way you play? Or is it the way you deal with the players?
Because the way you deal with the players.
It's being a man manager, because when you're, or a woman manager, of course, it all depends what the situation is. But it's how you deal with players, because when you've got players that are earning millions and millions, and they can go, and it's been known before, go, well, I don't like him, I'm not going to bother playing for him. And then, so you've got to be able to deal with it right. And as Cliff Jones, famous old footballer who's 90 this year, said about the Bill Nicholson, who's a great old double-winning manager from Spurs back in the 60s, and he got a compliment from the manager, and he never gave compliments. And he said, oh, he gave me a compliment. He said, don't forget that pat on the back is just a few inches away from a kick up the backside. So that's it. You're having to deal with different characters in different ways. Some, like, you know, Stephen, you know, it's not going to, you know, you're brilliant about what you do. Or other could be, Stephen, you know, pull your finger out, it's a disgrace, because other people will react differently.
I've never objected to constructive criticism.
Yeah.
I think that's all well and good, because we all need a bit of that every now and then.
You know, the bit that I don't like, and I think this happens in every office everywhere, is that management technique when you know you're going to get told off. You go, yes, well, I just want to say you're doing very well. You're thinking, here it comes, I know what you're doing.
The sandwich,
yeah. Just talk to me like a normal person. And maybe that is what Arne Slot is good at.
Yeah, well, good on him.
Talk about rough bosses, though, Jim Radcliffe.
Yes,
at Manchester United.
A ruthless cost-cutting campaign.
Really? I mean, there's a really interesting article in The Telegraph today talking about what's going on at Manchester United. Now, Jim Radcliffe, firstly, now, I don't know whether it would seem on paper, it would seem that it's the wrong thing and disrespectful, but he failed to recognise the women's captain, an England player, Katie Zelem. This happened, she's left now, she plays in America. But when he went over to her and he was walking around Carrington, the training ground, and said, and what do you do?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, actually, I'm the captain. Oh, right, OK.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
It's not really good. You want the bosses to know who the people are, especially the important ones as well. So anyway, The Telegraph is talking about the penny pinching that's going on. Now, for example, the maintenance department, they've been having to literally count the number of screws that they've ordered, so they don't over-order because it's going to cost too much money. So just, you know, how many holes you've got to use, you know, you've got to count the screws. Big stationery order at Carrington. The training ground. Sellotape was returned because sellotape is not a necessity. Send that back. Portion sizes at the canteen are smaller now, and there's less variety than there used to be.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the £50 steward of the week. So they give a bonus to a steward, and they give him 50 quid, him or her 50 quid. That's been scrapped, and they now get a paper certificate saying thanks very much.
For
50 quid. And this is the amazing thing, is that
How
they
does
paid...
that save you a lot of money?
Well, they paid £14.5 million to get rid of Eric Ten Hag. I know you can probably say, well, they run as different departments, but £14.5 million quid that went to Eric Ten Hag, sporting director Dan Ashworth, and football staff that were got rid of. So, you know, for sellotape and 50 quid for...
Yeah. It's always targeting the wrong people, isn't
That's usually the problem. 250 people that have lost their jobs as well. I know they've got to be run as businesses, but sometimes you think, does it have to be that way?
Yeah, I'd agree. Right, we're out of time.
OK.
Thanks,
We shall see you next hour.
Lots of rugby coming up in the next hour,
Great. Do stay with us. We're going through the papers shortly. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Coral will be affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean, bringing in a cold plume, so below average temperatures. These are set to affect Athens, parts of Santorini, so feeling cold here. But as we move our way further west, milder, yes, but some unsettled weather on the cards. Some rain affecting Nice, Barcelona, also parts of Portugal. But Madeira and Tenerife staying largely dry, and that remains the way into next week. Also the best of the temperatures, and temperatures improving across Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
He's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Oh, there he goes. Nice. He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
Nice.
It's probably slightly more meaningful than having the villainous Engel.
Oh, come on, Trey. You want to get Feathers McGraw?
Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind. You know when you go abroad and you know B4 Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that, or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean
I haven't got
something.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll get something.
I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out
with that.
Chaotic. A disaster could happen. Then I walk out. Oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
Covered in them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. We are going through the papers with former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and the broadcaster Alex Dyke. Very good morning, you two. Scarlett, let's start with this story about Meghan Markle, shall we, and her advice for throwing kids' parties.
Oh, how useful.
This story is completely bonkers. So what it's about is that one of Meghan Markle's friends went round and said, "Oh, Meghan Markle's great. She gives you lots of good advice." And actually, there isn't any advice about giving kids parties. What she says is that if you're entertaining, and this applies to dinner parties and everything, that instead of having overhead lights, you should have lamps. And it seems
that's it.
And it seems that this has got everybody in a rage, and people going, "I can't afford to have lamps everywhere, and I can't have the time to switch them all on." But I can't remember a time. I mean, the last 20 years, we have been told you have lamps rather than overhead lights.
Have you?
Yeah. Oh, yes, Stephen.
I don't know, I never do dinner parties.
So I think
it's got light on.
Oh, don't you?
Never have the big light on.
Yeah, we all know that, right? It's got nothing to do with children's parties. This is a ridiculous
I think this is
story.
Just the press having another go at Meghan. Meghan and Harry, they've got to that point now in their lives, in their careers, where they can get nothing right. It doesn't matter what they do. And this new show, With Love, that is on Netflix, was delayed because of, if you remember, because of the California fires. And I think that was to get Meghan some good press. But just like Polo, I think this is going to be a massive flop. And who doesn't know how to give a kid a party? I mean, just every parent would know how to do that. And, of course, if you're as fortunate as Meghan is, you can spend as much money on... In fact, she probably gets professionals in
I was going to say, she doesn't have to do it. I mean, I remember my kids' parties. I was never very good at it. But... you're right. Meghan doesn't have a problem. She just gets a party plan.
Do you not think, though, Alex, it would be quite a popular show for Meghan on Netflix, considering a huge American audience? You'd have the Hollywood pull of, I assume, all of her friends coming along for dinner. I mean, it's a lifestyle show, isn't it? Do you not think there'd be an appetite for that?
I don't... With Meghan, I watched the one with Sly Stallone the other day, which was good because I'm a fan of Sly, but it was just another version of the Kardashians. But the problem with Meghan, I think that the challenge is people don't warm to her for whatever reason, so they won't invest their time in it. I could be proved wrong.
It can smell fakery. That's the thing. We all know people, presenters and the rest of it, who would just... It's entirely fake.
That was fakery and not bakery.
Fakery and bakery.
And the other thing is of course, her children will not be in it. No. I mean, I think she's completely right. But so it's not going to be real life at all.
No. Can we have a look, Alex? This is in the Mail Online this morning. Moses, as he parted the Red Sea... scientists have made a shocking discovery, apparently. What have they found?
Well, do you know what they found is some pools. I think they're pronounced breen pools. And in these pools that have I'm now sounding like I'm really intelligent, but all I've done is just...
No, you're not. Don't worry.
Thank you, Stephen. I've just read the story. So, down in the depths, 4,000 feet deep, they found these salty pools which scientists can now look at and they can find out things from thousands of years ago about flash floods and tsunamis and earthquakes. And I read it thinking, we're going to find out how Moses did it. But it doesn't tell you that. And the thinking behind that from scientists is that when Moses was leading the Israelites to the Promised Land, there was a freak weather condition. Where something happened and the levels of the waters dropped and it kind of drained away. That's how Moses did it, apparently.
Right, well, it was a miracle.
It was a miracle, yeah.
That's.
But the other thing is they're not even sure whether it was there. And when I was in Jordan, I went to the place where Moses is supposed to be buried. But actually, there's no proof at all. But obviously, a lot of tourists go there.
Wasn't there a blue plaque?
There was a whole temple, dear.
Yeah, I know. It's well, you can't locate all these things, but it's interesting how all these things, we get explored and examined. I find that quite fascinating.
Scarlett, let's have a look at something completely different, shall we? In the Times, it's Times Online story today. How to spot a narcissist, the paranoid fear of being left out.
Yeah, this is a Very odd story. So apparently, if you're a narcissist, you're completely paranoid that things are going on, and you're being left out. But actually, the story then goes on. This is all about research done in Germany with thousands of people. Is that actually lots of people don't like narcissists, so they do leave them out. So they're not just paranoid. Is they think they should be the centre of everything, but they're such pains. But how? I mean. The question is how do you know that you're a narcissist, and whether you're being left out because you're difficult, or whether you're being left out because you should be the sort of centre of attention. But it's a very strange thing, because it doesn't really say what a narcissist is, apart from the fact that lots of people don't want them in their friendship groups, and they'll leave them out when they're at work.
Yes, it's like a statement of the blooming obvious.
Blooming obvious. I know. This is another long, very expensive study that tells us what we already
know. Yeah. I'll tell you what is worrying me slightly, Alex. This is the Daily Star this morning. We're seeing a surge in rats.
That's so true. I've seen loads recently.
Have you?
Everywhere.
Yeah. We definitely are. Pest controllers say that there's a 31% increase in the sightings of the rodents. But this is what we all know. We're having warmer weather these days, and a lot of us are buying takeaway food. We're not finishing that burger. We're then just chucking the remains of it either on the street or in the bins. And so it's a great time to be a rat.
Yeah.
It is.
And they've got no fear.
No.
But are they saying so there's more rats on the street? I mean, I remember seeing a rat in my house, and I thought...
In your house?
Not in the kitchen.
In the kitchen. And actually, I did the. I thought it was dark, and I thought no, I'm being paranoid. This is absolutely ridiculous. So I decided it didn't exist. And then my son moved in, and I went on holiday, and I felt so sorry for him. And he said, "There's a rat." Somebody's got to do something. Yes. So he got in pest control.
Wasted. By use of musical
UB40.
Exactly.
There's a rat in the kitchen.
What am I going to do?
And that is clearly one up from a mouse. I mean, I think a lot of people could put up with the occasional...
I have mice.
Field mice.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. You've got mice as well.
Well, it's sometimes... Of course.
You need pest control round, Scarlett.
And cockroaches.
No, I don't have cockroaches.
I
have the odd mouse that sometimes... I just think they're fine. I mean, I scream and it goes away. But the rat really was awful.
Well, they say you're never more than 6 foot away from a rat.
I know.
Did you
that's
know
very
rats,
true.
Rats have a sense of humour.
Do they?
Right.
They do. They're one of the very few animals that actually laugh and have a sense of humour.
Oh, what do they find funny?
I have no idea, but it's true. They're very intelligent.
Oh, really?
I had an au pair who said, "Can I have a rat?" And I said no. And then I discovered that she'd got the rat in her bedroom. And, I mean, she was looking after my baby.
Yeah, but rats are meant to make very good pets, domestic rats.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've never had one, but, you know.
No, she said she wanted something to cuddle.
Oh, God. Not sure about that. Let's have a look, Alex, at the Pope, shall we?
Yes.
This is in the Telegraph today.
Yeah, in the Telegraph, Pope Francis could resign over ill health. Now, he hasn't just got pneumonia, he's got double pneumonia, and he's 88 years old. So he is in hospital, but he's working from his hospital bed. But they're saying he may step down if this double pneumonia stops him from having direct contact with his subjects. So I don't know. I mean, popes are often elderly, aren't they? You've got to get to a certain age.
Yeah.
We're not going to... could we ever have a young pope? A pope in his 20s?
No. They have
not
to
magnificent
be. They
enough.
have to be cardinals to become a pope. So they have to have been around for quite a long time.
So they've got to have been around for a long time. But he is 88. And I don't think, from reading what I've read, they're that worried about him because they think he could be out of hospital soon.
Well, let's hope so.
Let's hope
so. And I hope he doesn't stand down. I didn't like that.
That Benedict, no.
Not when he stood down. I can understand why, but it's the sort of job you should be in till you pop off, really, shouldn't it? It's like being a monarch.
Yes, except, you know, maybe Benedict did feel that he couldn't do it properly. I mean, they are talking about... I mean, you know, being a pope, you're supposed to do things. I mean, if you're really, really ill.
Yeah.
It must be difficult, yeah. Well, thank you, you two. We'll see you in the next hour, Scarlett and Alex. And let's have a look at the weather now with Honor.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled Orkney ferry sailings this morning between North Hoy and both Stromness and Grahamsay because of poor weather conditions. Some cancelled Stena Line sailings between Cairn Ryan and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield, and some cancelled Irish ferry sailings between Holyhead and Dublin. Now, Tyne and Wear metro services are suspended between Monument and Gateshead Stadium because of a faulty train. In Suffolk, the A14 is closed westbound between junctions 50 and 49 from Stow Upland to Stow Market after an accident causing delays as you divert. In Rodican and Taff, the High Street at Pentra is blocked for an investigation causing queues. On the M25 in Kent, there are clockwise queues coming off at junction 2 for the A2 because of an accident blocking a lane on the eastern side of the roundabout there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Could you be accepting freedom of movement with the European Union?
Well, the government is set to offer EU countries a youth mobility scheme as part of a Brexit reset with the bloc.
Well, the Australian-style agreement could see tens of thousands of youngsters living and working here.
Elon Musk echoes Donald Trump. The world's richest man claims President Zelenskyy is feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. That's as the Foreign Secretary David Lammy warns that Russia doesn't have the appetite for peace.
Well, the Washington war of words on all this is intensifying. Nigel Farage has had his say.
You should always take everything Donald Trump says seriously. You shouldn't always take things that Donald Trump says absolutely literally. Zelenskyy is not a dictator, but it's only right and proper that Ukrainians have a timeline for elections.
Well, as far as President Zelenskyy is concerned, the White House briefing yesterday said that the president was very frustrated with President Zelenskyy over insults about him operating in a disinformation space. This comes, of course, as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to fly out to Washington next week.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas will pay after failing to release the body of the hostage Shiri Bibas.
There's a new mission for the makers of James Bond. Amazon has taken creative control of the 007 franchise.
A huge breakthrough in Egypt. Archaeologists discover the first pharaoh's tomb since Tutankhamun.
And in the sport this morning, Daniel Dubois' defence of his IBA World Heavyweight title against Joseph Parker is off, as he is not well. In rugby, the Six Nations is back this weekend. The Calcutta Cup between England and Scotland, as Wales play Ireland. And in darts, a win for Wales in Ireland, as Gerwyn Price wins his first Premier League of darts night for 2 years.
Hello there. Turning milder, but also wet and windy. There are a chance we could see some sunshine heading into the weekend. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. Now, I've got a lovely story in the papers today. Apparently, British humour is more intelligent than American comedy.
Oh. Yes. Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Absolutely
it's
spot on.
a new study, and I also think that's spot on. So boffins, it's always boffins.
Boffins, I like a boffin.
I love a boffin.
It's always boffins. They discovered that the UK sense of humour is one of the main reasons why Europeans love our shows and films. Those that were interviewed in Europe described British wit as ironic, unique and intelligent. American humour was more basic and simplistic.
Have you tried making a joke, an ironic joke in America? It's something I love to do because you just see the eyes glaze over. Actually, come to think of it, I think that happens to me here as well.
It does.
But yeah, irony is not a big thing, is it?
You only have to watch something like Saturday Night Live, which is the big
and I don't get the
comedy
humour
show.
at all.
It's almost slapstick. Which is just falls flat over here.
Hey, we love that Benny Hill. We love that Monty Python. We don't know what's going on, but we love that Monty Python. Yeah. But Benny Hill, it's a place for everything. A good bit of slapstick, but irony. I mean, it has changed maybe over the years, but if you're very ironic and make jokes and say it with a straight face, it's like...
It does seem very surface level, doesn't it, American humour? Well, apparently, so this is one of the respondents in this survey, said... American comedies are very predictable, you know what the joke's going to be, but in a way it makes the shows more comforting. And maybe that explains why some of the American sitcoms are just so popular.
Yeah.
Think about Friends.
Yes, it's very...
I mean, it's just very...
You know when the gag's coming. The
You know
setup,
the
the
gag's
setup, the
coming.
setup, bang, there it is. And, yeah, absolutely.
But there you go. Oh, and Europeans in particular liked British comedies such as Fleabag, Afterlife and Sex Education. There you go.
I didn't know Sex Education was a comedy.
No.
I've never watched it.
Oh, it is a comedy.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's because it's too ironic for you. That's the problem.
Oh, this is it.
That's the problem.
There you are. Let us know what you think about that one.
It's like too many forks and all I need is a knife.
Yes, exactly. 4 candles.
Anyway, moving swiftly on. The Prime Minister's Brexit reset charges on. The Times reporting this morning that the UK could offer a youth mobility scheme to European nations.
Well, the deal could bring tens of thousands of young EU workers and students to the UK for up to 3 years, while granting young Britons similar opportunities in Europe.
Well, it's understood that if the scheme were implemented, and it's not guaranteed, there would be a cap on the number allowed to come to Britain.
Well, that's despite the EU previously stating that mobility is not subject to a quota.
Well, the government is standing by its previous position, which has been to reject any such scheme. They say we don't have plans for a youth mobility agreement. We're committed to resetting the relationship with the EU to improve the British people's security, safety and prosperity. We've been clear there will be no return to freedom of movement, the customs union or the single market.
Well, let's get the thoughts of political editor at The Spectator, Katie Balls, who joins us in the studio. Morning, Katie. It all comes down to semantics with this, doesn't it, whether there's going to be a scheme or not?
Yes, it's clear that this is something that the EU really want. And I think it's quite clear that the price for what Keir Starmer wants, which is closer trading relations, some of the trading friction removed, is going to be something on EU youth mobility. But you can see the UK government will want to dress it up in a certain way if they move on it and try and stay away from the idea this is a return to freedom of movement. The question is, if you do allow young Europeans access to the UK, different access than others would get in different countries, is that freedom of movement through the back door? And I think that is the political risk for Keir Starmer if he does this, which it looks as though he is going soft on immigration and it backfires politically.
Yeah, also, I mean, the logistics of it. How do you work out who can come here, where they are, how long they're staying for? I mean, I can't imagine how the Home Office is in any position to actually run a scheme like this.
Yes, and you looking at the Australian scheme, for example, of what they might base this off. But the number of Europeans who could be eligible could be very high, which is why they're talking about a potential cap on it to limit the numbers. Yet you already have figures on the European side saying, what's this about a cap? That doesn't sound generous enough. Can you speak more positively about young Europeans coming to the UK? But I don't think that is the sentiment for lots of voters. And I think there is even concern within the Labour Party that this could play into this idea that Labour is soft on immigration, which is an issue they have at the moment when you look at both illegal immigration and numbers on legal migration.
And this deal that is reportedly on the table, I mean, would that even go down well with the Europeans in terms of the surcharges as well?
Well, I think you're going to see the Europeans, if this is the deal, trying to make it softer and more generous to them, because, as you say, it currently means that only a certain number of young Europeans could come, and so not everyone would be eligible, and you'd have to pay administrative fees as well as the NHS surcharge. And I think that that would be an effort by the UK government to say, see, this is not freedom of movement. It's not as generous as what happened during EU membership. But the EU wants various concessions. So they want concessions on fishing, they want concessions on trade, and they really want concessions on this. And if Keir Starmer doesn't give that, then they might not get this great reset, which they're really pushing for to try and get their goal of economic growth.
In terms of, I mean, you said Labour's seen as being sort of comparatively soft on immigration, and yet they are deporting more illegal immigrants than we've seen for a long time, actually, so if we believe the figures. So are they getting a bad rap? Are they just managing the PR badly?
Well, I think we've seen a big effort from Number 10, and particularly since Morgan McSweeney has become Chief of Staff after Sue Gray, Keir Starmer's very close aide, to try and get on the front foot on this. So, more footage of these, deportations, trying to get the message out that they are making progress in some areas. I think the issue is it's almost what Rishi Sunak found, which is Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, managed to reduce the number of small boat crossings, but there were still small boat crossings. And I think, therefore, you can be making progress and voters can still feel as though, in the grand scheme of things, there's not enough. And I think it's probably the issue Keir Starmer's having.
Yeah, yeah.
OK, Katie Balls, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
I'd love to know your thoughts on that. gbnews.com/your say. Now, the White House has cancelled, well, this was yesterday, there was meant to be a joint news conference with President Zelenskyy and General Kellogg, who's President Trump's man in Ukraine. But he seems to have fallen out of favour with Donald Trump anyway. So they had a meeting, but the news conference was cancelled. And, of course, it all comes after President Trump dubbed his Ukrainian counterpart a dictator.
Well, meanwhile, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has waded into that row, accusing President Zelenskyy of being a fraud machine that feeds off the dead bodies of soldiers.
Well, Donald Trump stated that Russia holds the cards in any peace talks, as the country has already taken a lot of territory.
Well, we're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. And Mark, it does seem as though this war of words between Washington and Ukraine is only escalating.
Yes, there's no doubt. And we got an interesting insight, really, into how President Trump is feeling from his national security advisor, who was speaking at a White House briefing last night and said that President Trump felt deeply angered by the comments made by Volodymyr Zelenskyy earlier in the week when he accused the president of occupying or living in a disinformation space. Now, that has particular resonance and pain, of course, for the Trump administration, given all of the fallout over a number of years now after the first Trump presidency, when he was accused of being there, of colluding with the Russians, of the Russians affecting and interfering in the election. So all of that, as I say, has particular resonance for President Trump. He did not take at all well the comments from President Zelenskyy earlier in the week. And what we see since then, of course, is not just President Trump, but his administration opening fire again with both barrels, the latest being Elon Musk. And he didn't, hold back at all, calling President Zelenskyy again, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, a dictator once again, but also saying that he was a grafter and that he was someone as well who was feeding off the bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers. So, all very unnecessary for sure, and comes ahead of two key European leaders heading off to the US next week, with first President Macron of France on Monday, and then Sir Keir Starmer heading over there on Thursday for talks with President Trump.
But, I mean, what I find difficult with this, Mark, is, this is the president who said he was going to he could sort Ukraine out within 24 hours. We're getting this very obscure and potentially damaging rhetoric about Ukraine from both him and Elon Musk, and Ukraine not even invited to the table, so it would seem, when it comes to the negotiations. It's difficult to see how he's making it anything other than harder to find some sort of peace agreement here.
Yes, listen, President Trump is unpredictable at best. We know that. In terms of Ukraine not being invited to the table, well, this has been well rehearsed in recent days because, we've heard it from the Trump administration that there are no negotiations. This was a face-to-face meeting with a country, Russia, who've been frozen out of any discussions with Western leaders ever since the invasion in February 2022. So it's an opportunity for those US officials to gauge the intent of the Russians before going into any peace negotiations. And they are very clear that at the point where they feel that Russia is serious, that they can determine perhaps what Russia's red lines are, they then enter into negotiations. And at that point, Ukraine is absolutely the other party in the room. It would be brokered by the US, but obviously with Russia and Ukraine. So that's our standpoint on that. But I think there's no doubt that President Trump probably wasn't prepared for the pushback that he got from Volodymyr Zelenskyy. We know that he doesn't take criticism well, that he clearly from his national security advisor saying so much last night, feels very wounded by the comments from Vladimir Zelenskyy, who I'm sure President Trump felt should be very grateful for the aid that the Ukrainians were receiving from the US, and perhaps would just remain fairly sort of passive in terms of any objections he would have at this stage. But anyway, look, we are where we are with quite a diplomatic row that we need to sort of, in terms of the world leaders, need to move on from, and that's what President Macron and Sir Keir Starmer will be trying their level best to do when they meet with Donald Trump next week.
OK, Mark White there for us. Thank you very much.
Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Hamas will pay for not releasing the body of Shiri Babas yesterday, accusing the terror group of seriously violating the ceasefire agreement.
Well, 4 bodies were returned from Gaza to Israel yesterday, including 2 of Shiri's children, Kafir and Ariel.
Well, this comes after her husband was released earlier this month as part of that deal between the two sides.
We're joined now by Israeli journalist Amir Oren, who is live from Tel Aviv for us. Good to see you this morning, Amir. And I can only imagine the distress in Israel.
Yes, Israel underwent quite a shock. First of all day yesterday, Thursday, the country was in mourning because presumably the bodies of the Bibas family, along with another dead hostage or dead Lifshitz, were returned. And overnight, after a forensic examination, the word came that only the 2 infants, Ariel and Kfir, were indeed the bodies returned, and that Shiri Bibas, the mother, was not, and some anonymous Palestinian was instead given to Israel. Now, add to that the fact that the coroner announced that the 3 identified Israelis, Mr. Lifshitz and the 2 infants, were murdered, were brutally murdered by Hamas, were not incidentally killed by an Israeli attack on wherever they were held, but they were murdered intentionally. Now, the question arises, why would Hamas do that? Why would they replace the hostage that they committed to deliver to Israel with some other body? And here you have 2 possible hypotheses. One is that the chaos in Gaza is such that the minor organization, or actually crime family, who originally abducted the Bibas family and then had to give them over to Hamas, misplaced the body, or perhaps Hamas later misplaced the body, originally as early as November of 2023. The bodies were to be exchanged, but then the deal fell through. And the other possibility is that Shiri Bibas was abused, molested, or worse, either before she died or later, and that Hamas didn't want Israel to find out, even though they should have known that the forensic experts will find the truth.
What are we likely to see happen here? Because is this an issue, as serious as it is it an issue worth jeopardising the whole ceasefire over?
It will not jeopardize the deal, because during this first phase of the deal, 33 Israelis were to be returned from Hamas captivity, 25 alive and 8 dead. Only 6 Israelis of the 25 are yet to be released, and this is scheduled for tomorrow, Saturday. The other 4 dead Israelis are to be returned next Monday. So Israel is not going to put at risk the release of the 6 and the return of the other 4 bodies, even while this controversial part of the deal is being sorted out.
Mick, can I ask you about the suspected terror attack that took place last night in Tel Aviv? 3 buses exploded, didn't they? Thankfully, they were empty, so nobody has been harmed. But obviously, things are very, very tense there.
Yes, indeed. And first of all, this has not happened in Israel for 30 years. A multi-arena terror act, apparently well planned, but clumsily executed. This is probably the result of Hamas planning. Out of the West Bank, the Hamas cells in the West Bank are being guided, or at least inspired, by Hamas in Gaza. But such terror acts are being perpetrated so that Hamas in Gaza could claim that this is not in violation of the ceasefire. Now, had there been casualties here, obviously Israel would have reacted very strongly. As it stands, because no one was hurt, what the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are going to do is to reinforce their battalions in the West Bank, and perhaps once the perpetrators or the dispatchers are found in one of the cities of the West Bank, we will see a major operation there.
OK. Amir Oren in Tel Aviv. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, 20 minutes past 8. Let's get a check on the weather, shall we, with Honor.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, how do you fancy getting your hands on a new iPhone, 500 quid's worth of shopping vouchers and £10,000 in tax-free cash? Well, 2 of you can. Here's how.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16 along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do stay with us. Still to come, a huge breakthrough in Egypt. You have to stay tuned to find out a little bit more. That's next.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, a new poll commissioned by Channel 4 shows that more than half of Gen Z believe that Britain should be ruled by a dictator. Seriously, they actually said that. Well, 1 in 3 would want an army. What's the army in charge? 1 in 3 want martial law.
There's something on the idea of some form of strong leadership. They have looked at British politics. They have looked at the politics in which they grow up in. And they see failures at the democratic level. They see a weak, a soft, a centre that doesn't do anything, makes promises and fails to deliver them. They see nothing actually happening. And they also see a future where they have no democratic engagement because they're never going to have a house. They're never going to have a family. Why would they? Why would they be able to? So the idea of having somebody strong to come through and blow away the cobwebs of our current system, I can see that being attractive. When I grew up, I was talking to not that old men and women who had been through the war, who knew what dictatorship was. Up until the 70s, we were in the Cold War. People knew what dictatorship was. They knew people being locked up, being sent to Siberia. They knew what this meant. And I don't think anybody under the age of 34 actually has a clue. It's all the other side of the world. It's in North Korea, it's in China. It's not here, and it's not part of their lived experience. And that's a big change.
And I wonder, actually, Nigel, if a lot of these people think, I don't know, like Donald Trump's a dictator. He got elected with a huge mandate. Do they understand what dictators is? Or, actually, are young people just so listless? They're so feeble-minded, they need to be told what to do and how to live.
I certainly think that Gwen's right about there's a disillusionment with democracy and the results of it. The idea that a dictatorship is the answer to it, or having the military rule over us, is obvious nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Now, in an astonishing discovery in a century, British Egyptologists have uncovered the tomb of King Thutmose II.
Yes, the Egyptian pharaoh reigned and lived more than 3,500 years ago. Now, his tomb was found 1.5 miles away from Egypt's Luxor region, known, of course, as the Valley of the Kings.
Well, it's the first discovery since the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Let's talk to archaeologist and historian Gillian Hovell. Good to see you this morning, Gillian. How exciting is this?
It's brilliant. It's wonderful because there hasn't been a royal tomb found for the 100 years since Tutankhamun was found. And also, he's actually an ancestor of Tutankhamun, so it's the same family. So it's wonderful to find royalty, a space of royalty where they weren't really expecting it. It's a magnificent discovery.
But isn't it? I mean, the slight disappointment would seem to be there doesn't seem to be a mummy there.
No. The mummy, well, the whole thing had flooded only a few years after he was buried in there. So they actually moved him. They moved everything, all his furniture that was in there, everything that was there. It had been created underneath an area where there was a waterfall. So it all flooded. They had to move him out. And all we had is a few scraps of the painting and a few scraps of alabaster jar, which actually has his name and his wife's name, Hatshepsut, on it as well. So that identifies it. But his mummy was actually moved a long time after that from wherever he was reburied. It was placed in a cave up above Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, a little way away. And we actually have his mummy. We have it in the museum. He was rescued along with 50 other kings. In about 4000 BC, things were tough in Egypt. There was a lot of poverty. The royal tombs were raided by Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, and the priests moved the mummified remains of the kings up to a cave, and we found them there in 1891. So Tutmos II has been found, although there's some question of his identity. But all of his goodies that he was buried with are still lurking somewhere in another tomb, waiting to be found.
Doesn't that sound like something from Indiana Jones?
It does, doesn't it? So how was this tomb found?
Well, the team has been working there for 12 years in the area. Archaeology it's not like Time Team, 3 days dig and off you go. It takes years. So they've been finding lots of royal wives and all sorts of tombs. And then they found this sloping corridor that you can see. And they came down into it. They had to clear it from loads of limestone. It took months and months to clear. It was just piled high with rubble. And they found it and worked all their way through it until they got to the burial chamber, which is right at the far end. And that's where they found scraps of ceiling with blue sky painted on it with yellow gold stars painted on it. And that only happens in royal tombs. So that's when they knew that they had a royal king's tomb, not before.
I just find it astounding, Gillian, that it's so fascinating, it's so interesting. Is that because it is... I mean, there's a lot of mystery around it all, but the fact it is just from such a long time ago, at a time when, well, I don't know how we were living over here in the UK, but, I mean, certainly our civilization was nothing like the Egyptians.
No. I mean, we had built Stonehenge by then, and we were very definitely in the Bronze Age, which so were the Egyptians, actually. But they were building huge monuments. They had a very identified art form. They had a belief system that lasted for 3,000 years. And ancient Egypt is unlike any other ancient culture. It's just magnificent. It had an identity, a confidence about itself. It built these magnificent monuments. It had wealth that belonged to the pharaoh and not really to anyone else, to be honest. But it enabled them to build these stunning, stunning tombs, stunning temples, etc. And their way of life seems alien to us, but they were human just like us.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love all this sort of stuff. Gillian, really good to talk to you this morning. Come back again, won't you? Thank you.
Please. Yes, anytime. Thank you.
Lovely.
She's great, isn't she?
Yeah.
Now, some brief breaking news to bring you now. And the woman who claimed to be Madeleine McCann has been charged with 4 counts of stalking. Julia Wandel from Poland was arrested at Bristol Airport on Wednesday and has been remanded in custody. She's due to appear at Leicestershire Magistrates Court today.
Right, Paul Coyte's going to be here with all of your sports news and the latest on the rugby. That's next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A96 is blocked each way by an accident at the A920 Old Meldrum turn-off at Copley, causing queues towards and away from Aberdeen. In Antrim, the A20 is closed westbound along Newtonards Road at Strandtown for emergency repairs, affecting traffic heading into Belfast. On the M6 in the West Midlands, the inside lane's closed northbound where there's an accident just after Junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, causing queues. The M48 Severn Bridge is closed each way between England and Wales because of strong winds. Diversions via the M4 over the Prince of Wales Bridge. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking a quarter of an hour and queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks, and train services in Cornwall have been stopped southbound from St Austell to Penzance, with delays of up to half an hour northbound because of a fallen tree on the line. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
8:36. Paul's got the sport. Good morning.
Good morning.
Who's feeling a bit peaky today?
Daniel Dubois, a bit peaky actually, a bit under the weather. Do you reckon Daniel Dubois is supposed to be fighting Joseph Parker? Obviously, I think you've probably realised that the fight is off by the time it's supposed to. So I don't know whether, because it's in Saudi Arabia, he's the world champion, he's the world IBA heavyweight champion.
I mean, I wouldn't say that to his face, by the way.
What?
Are you feeling a bit peaky?
Well, I don't know. I think that's OK. I think what you don't want to say to his face is, are you sure? You look all right to me. So I don't know whether he phones up and says, I just feel a bit... I don't think I can be coming into the ring tomorrow because I feel a bit unwell. So I don't know whether it works that way. But Dubois is not going to be fighting Joseph Parker now, which is a shame. It would have been a great fight. Dubois, who destroyed Anthony Joshua a couple of months back. So now there is a new challenger, Congolese Martin Bakoli, who is based in Scotland. So he will now be taking the place. It's not quite going to be, with respect to Martin, it's not going to be quite the fight that we hoped for, but anyway, that's taking place tomorrow.
Has Martin trained for this?
Yeah, I think so. That's the thing. Can you imagine getting the call at the last minute?
I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah, I know. You go, listen, you've got good news. We've got plenty of money for you. But it's tomorrow. And he said, what do you think?
No.
It's going to be about 10 million quid, isn't it?
I don't.
Like that.
He's not going to get anywhere near that. He's going to get. He'll make some money out of it. I don't know how much he's going to. But it's certainly not going to be anything like that when you're brought in to cover. So he'll do okay, and they'll always train. But he's not exactly going to be training specifically for this fight. But anyway, we wish him well tomorrow.
We do.
Six Nations this weekend.
Yeah, we're into the 3rd out of 5 now. Wales versus Ireland is tomorrow. That's the first one, which starts at 2:15. Wales, you've got to feel for Wales. I mean, Wales one of the proud rugby nations. Rugby is in the veins of the Welsh people, isn't it?
Just not the feet.
I know I'm sounding like Dylan Thomas here. I'm trying not to sound poetic, but I can't help myself. It's in the feet, it's everywhere. And it's in the hands, it's everywhere. But Wales are just having a horrible time.
Why is it? Is it the coaching?
You know what? There's so many different reasons. There's problems with the game in Wales itself, and that's the domestic game. There's also a problem, whereas Warren Gatland has had a great set of players, and a lot of the players have now stepped away because they're getting too old. Bring the new ones in. He's saying not new enough players. There's so many different reasons that nobody can truly go, that's the reason, or else it'll be sorted out. But it hasn't been. So Matt Sherratt is an Englishman who's going to be looking after the Welsh team. He's hoping to turn over Ireland, but my goodness, it's going to be extremely difficult. And
Ireland's playing well.
And they are playing well. And what are they playing in?
White.
And the reason being?
To make it easier for colourblind fans.
That's right. That's it. Because for those that are thinking
that pop quiz.
That you've got a matching jacket and tie, that's not the case. Apparently 4%. I think, is it 4? I think it's 4% of the population are actually colourblind.
It's sort of men only, isn't it, who are colourblind?
More men, actually, more men.
So we're not being very inclusive to our colourblind audience right now, are we?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, no. Well, if you didn't know, we're wearing green. But that's it. It's red and green are the big issues, aren't they? They can't really distinguish between the two.
It's like the old commentary, black and white, for those watching in black and white. Tottenham Hotspur are wearing yellow. Yeah. That's the similar sort of thing. So anyway, that's the reason. It's a nice reason. White, because then if the people that love rugby and the way it's always been, you know, you've got to have the red of Wales and the green of Ireland. That's the reason it's white and red.
England, Scotland tomorrow.
Calcutta Cup, the 132nd. It's all been Scotland. Last 5 years, all Scotland. They couldn't buy a win at Twickenham. Now they've won the last 2. But this time, I have a feeling it's going to be different. 1872, the Calcutta Cup was originated in India. It was 2 army teams, English and Scottish, played against each other in India. That's where the Calcutta Cup comes from.
It's a lovely cup.
And the cup, it looks like a big tea urn, doesn't it? It's a very big silver tea urn
with an elephant on top.
With an elephant on the top. Well, I don't think the tea pours out of the trunk, but it's a very lovely cup.
That would be a very good thing to do.
There it is. Look at that.
There it is.
Beautiful cup.
And snakes as the handle, I like that.
Snakes as the handle, and it was damaged a few years back. You know what? I'm pointing the finger at Richard Hill, and I'm not. I don't want him to come back and go, it wasn't me. But there was an incident many years ago where it got damaged, and some players got into big trouble. So you have to respect the cup. That's the Calcutta playing for tomorrow. So that's tomorrow afternoon. The other one is Italy versus France, who play for the Giuseppe Garibaldi Trophy. So they've got their own trophy. Garibaldi, who was born in France and made lovely biscuits. And I don't know what the first one is. The Wales Island is what for the rich tea trophy or something.
Something like that. We're out of time. I just want to talk very quickly then about table tennis.
Do you want to do this? Should we do this? Have a look at it?
Yeah, go on.
Every now and again, I like to go back to the archives and see. So look at table tennis. Look at this. See how table tennis was in the day. What year do you reckon that was?
It's a very black and whitey. It's
very black and white. Movie, and you know,
looks
very good.
1940s.
1940s. When would you say, Ellie? Give me a year.
1930s. I'd say pre-war.
Pre-war, 1933.
That's
and you know what?
Footage, actually.
It's very good, isn't it? And there's no other reason for playing this. There's no table tennis tournaments going on. All it is just that I just can't take my eyes off of the 1933 table tennis.
Well, they're very good at it.
Yeah, very good. This goes on, by the way, for so long until 1934. It was the longest rally that was ever done back in the day.
Paul, we'll see you next week.
I think so.
Have a nice weekend.
Have a lovely weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
Enjoy the rugby.
Will do. Right. Before we have a look at the papers for you this morning, let's see what the forecast is for the top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Coral will be affecting eastern parts of the Mediterranean, bringing in a cold plume, so below average temperatures. These are set to affect Athens, parts of Santorini, so feeling cold here. But as we move our way further west, milder, yes, but some unsettled weather on the cards. Some rain affecting Nice, Barcelona, also parts of Portugal. But Madeira and Tenerife staying largely dry, and that remains the way into next week. Also the best of the temperatures, and temperatures improving across Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana are Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
5 years ago now, we developed this campaign called Regifting Beauty. And Regifting Beauty is about giving back to those that are in less fortunate situations than the majority of us. And I was coming across people that were receiving gifts at Christmas. You know how many gifts we receive? Gift sets, items, bath bombs, all of these things that we don't necessarily use. For myself, they sit in the bathroom cupboard all year round. So I was thinking of a way how we can make that better, you know, put that to better purpose. And we developed this campaign 5 years ago called Regifting Beauty. And it's where people can donate unwanted toiletries, sanitary items, skincare, perfumes, and we work with different charities around the country and they will re-gift them to survivors of domestic abuse. And for years now, it's only really been focused around women. There hasn't really been a male focus. So Ben and I were having conversations and we were thinking, well, and I was getting comments throughout the years of doing it, saying, why are men excluded from this? Surely it should be applicable to men too. I mean, in the UK, over 700,000 men are suffering with domestic abuse on an annual basis. And a lot of that goes unreported. And there's over 2 million people in the UK that do suffer from some form of domestic abuse, be it physical or psychological, and it's an important topic that we should be discussing. So this campaign is about providing something that may seem trivial, but it restores some level of dignity, and I think that's so important when survivors are just trying to regain aspects of their life. Something so small that maybe sitting in your bathroom cupboard that you're not using could go to such better use. So this year we're launching the Regifting Beauty, the Turnaround Edition, about turning around moments in life and allowing people to have those turnaround moments, which also plays on Ben's, song, Turnaround.
Gotta turn
it fits in nicely with that.
Which I'll be on with you.
For the remix,
it's all fitting in nicely, isn't it?
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We are going through the papers this morning with former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and the broadcaster Alex Dyke. Morning, you two. And Scarlett, let's have a look at this story, shall we? It's domestic abuse specialists placed in 999 control rooms.
So this is.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Oh, a brilliant idea. This is really, really important, and it happened because a woman called Raneem Uden, who'd rung 999 quite often over a few months, saying, my husband's abusing me, and they didn't take records of it. And then one night she rang them 4 times, and by the end of that night, she and her mother had been killed by the husband because they just didn't take it seriously. And what we have to remember is that there's a woman killed by her husband or ex-partner once every 3 days in Britain. I mean, it is...
Once every 3 days?
Once every 3 days.
Great.
Right. And we've got to do something about it, and we've been talking about it, and actually this should help because this is... And what happens is a woman tries to leave an abusive relationship and then the man says absolutely no, and he would rather have her dead than leave. And we see it over and over again. If you read the court cases, they come up, and it is absolutely horrendous. And normally, it doesn't come out of nothing.
Exactly.
Right? There's a pattern
of abuse.
Absolutely.
Isn't the shocker here, though, that you think, hang on, it's 2025. It's about time. Why were these domestic abuse violence specialists not in 999 control rooms 25 years ago?
Precisely.
Precisely. Well, 25 years ago, domestic abuse was something that was just sort of under the carpet, and you had a few refuges. But if you said, oh, the police would go, oh, it's a domestic, and it would be,
yes.
oh, it's a domestic. This isn't proper violence, right? And actually, I mean, Alex, you're completely right that it's just got worse.
Well, let's hope this is a step in the right direction that makes a difference. Alex, apparently, Oracle of our time, Liz Truss, says Britain wants to be part of the Second American Revolution.
Yes. Liz is all for free speech these days, so this is...
Unless you say she crashed the economy, in which case she wants you to...
Cease and desist.
Cease and desist.
Yes. Yeah, well, she's not too keen on that. Anyway, she's announced this new free speech media network at a right-wing conference in Washington. And I can never make my mind up whether we have free speech in Britain or not these days. I mean... Thank goodness for GB News, where people can come on and give their opinions. But, you know, I worked for the BBC for many, many years, had many, many happy years there. But we got to the point where we weren't doing phone-ins anymore because opinions weren't welcomed on the radio. And I know that happens in the commercial network as well. So I'm not having a go at the BBC. But do we have free speech in Britain?
I think we... Well...
No, I think we do. Hold on.
We do to an extent.
I mean,
but you can't the trouble is, free speech doesn't mean you can say absolutely what you want.
Precisely.
Does it? You've got to. You know, you can't incite hatred and all that sort of thing. So there are some caveats to it all.
Yeah, and we don't want to ever be inciting hatred. But the times I say to my kids, my grown-up children at home, is I might say something and I might be a little bit cheeky and I say, can you say that outside? Because I don't know what you can say and what you can't say in some cases, and usually it's, no, Dad, you can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think one can go over the top on that, and there are all sorts of things we can say, and because of social media, right? I mean, you will get had up for saying one thing and I will get had up for saying the opposite, and everybody, you know, can pile in on me. But I think what's frightening about Liz Truss is, apart from the fact she talks about free speech and we're not allowed to talk about her crashing the economy, is she says we have a socialist government. I can say those of us in the Labour Party go, what?
Yeah, but it's socialist to Liz Truss.
Yes, well, I think that says enough. And they go, we have commissars ruling over us, as though, you know, as though we live in a place where we can't do what we want. And then people like me are told I'm anti-British. Actually, I think this is a great country, which is why I choose to live here. I don't want it to be turned into some mad thing like America, where you're allowed
Hasn't Keir Starmer already done that by putting people in prison who put something spiteful up on Facebook?
Hold on, let's get the facts right. Keir Starmer doesn't put anybody in prison. Judges put people in prison, and judges are independent, and it's very, very important that judges are independent from politicians, and that's what's going wrong in America. We need to have a separate judiciary, and actually, you know, the fact that Keir Starmer said that people who were rioting were wrong is absolutely right. We saw them attacking police. So I don't think that's got anything to do with free speech.
Scarlett, talking about Keir Starmer, he is under pressure, isn't he, to raise defence spending to 3% now?
Yeah, which is, look, it's highly problematic, isn't it? On the one hand, there is no question that Europe has to... every European country, including Britain, in NATO, has to take responsibility for defence. We can no longer rely on the Americans, and we shouldn't have been doing it anyway. And then what is he going to cut to raise
foreign aid?
Defence? Well, some of us think foreign aid is really, really important.
Yeah, but
it's soft
nearly
power, and it's
£15.5 billion a year. And we used to spend
0.5%.
Yeah, no, but when we're taking money off pensioners...
Well, we shouldn't have been... I mean, you know, that was a mistake.
In more peaceful times, we spent up to 4% on
No, we didn't. We used to spend, we went up to 0.7% and then Boris Johnson took it down to 0.5. It's never been over 0.7. It's always been a tiny, tiny proportion. And actually the money is incredibly important. And if we want to stop people leaving countries and coming here, we actually need to try and do things.
But we're not doing that, are we?
Well,
and more people are coming. So wouldn't it be better to spend it on defence and police and our borders?
I think that we actually, as a rich country, have a duty to do things and what we do is really important. I mean,
but we don't. I mean, I totally get your point and the soft power thing and all that's absolutely legitimate. And I would tend to agree with you if we were a rich country, if we had more money, but when we're pilfering the pockets of pensioners and talking about cutting ISAs down to £4,000 and taxing farmers and all the rest of it, I mean, heck, we've got to prioritise.
No, but also it helps. I mean, one of the things that we do with foreign aid actually is to set up vaccination. I mean, we're putting money into researching vaccinations.
There's a lot of wastage as well, though, isn't there?
There's wastage everywhere, but I mean, they do really, really try, and when the money comes down, people die.
OK. Look, we've got to leave it there, you two. But it's been really good to see you both this morning.
Thank
Alex,
you very much,
Scarlett, thank you.
Let's get a check on the weather now with Honor.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A96 is closed in both directions off the A920 Old Meldrum turn-off at Coalplay after an accident causing queues towards and away from Aberdeen. In Antrim, the A20 is closed westbound along Newtonards Road at Strandtown for emergency repairs affecting traffic heading into Belfast. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident just after Junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, though the delays seem to have cleared. The M48-7 bridge is closed each way between England and Wales because of strong winds. Versions via the M4 over the Prince of Wales Bridge. Just a short queue now on the M26 in Kent, approaching the M25 because of road works, and train services in Cornwall are suspended southbound from St Austell to Penzance, up to half-hour delays northbound because of a fallen tree on the line. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Could we be accepting freedom of movement with the European Union?
The government is set to offer EU countries a youth mobility scheme as part of Brexit reset talks with the bloc.
Well, it's an Australian-style agreement, and it could see tens of thousands of youngsters living and working over here.
Elon Musk echoes Donald Trump. The world's richest man claims President Zelenskyy is feeding off the dead bodies of his countrymen. That's as the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, warns Russia doesn't have the appetite for peace.
Well, the Washington war of words is intensifying. Nigel Farage has given us his perspective.
You should always take everything Donald Trump says seriously. You shouldn't always take things that Donald Trump says absolutely literally. Zelenskyy is not a dictator, but it's only right and proper that Ukrainians have a timeline for elections.
Well, into the eye of this diplomatic storm, the French and the UK leaders are heading off to Washington next week. But is Trump in any mood to listen?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas will pay after failing to release the body of hostage Shiri Bibas. The journalist Amir Oman had this to say.
Shiri Bibas, the mother was not, and some anonymous Palestinian was instead given to Israel.
Also for you this morning, it's a new mission for the makers of 007. Amazon is taking creative control of James Bond.
A huge breakthrough in Egypt. Archaeologists discover the first pharaoh's tomb since Tutankhamun.
Hello there. Turning milder, but also wet and windy. There's a chance we could see some sunshine heading into the weekend. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
Good morning to you. It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
And thankfully, loads of you getting in touch this morning. I know we've been a bit light on the views today, but there's been a lot going on. We were talking earlier on about with Peter Bleksley and a gentleman from Big Brother UK looking at all this facial recognition stuff that's going on, because they're going to have it rolled out in Cardiff for the rugby this weekend. I have to say, you're a Peter Bleksley fan club.
You are.
Saying Pete Richard says, Peter, totally right as usual. It's saying you've got to be able to examine these things. There's so many immigrants here in the country and things are only going to get worse. you've got and then Peyton says if you drive, that they've got all your information on your licence, face, date of birth, address, national insurance number. Well said, Peter.
Kathy, I woke up this morning to the reassuring common sense of Peter Blexley. Why can't we have more common sense, experienced policemen at the helm of our police forces?
Honestly, I know he wouldn't do it, but Peter Blexley running the Metropolitan Police would be an interesting move.
Yeah, it would
actually. Vernon says about Jake, who was from Big Brother Watch, says, has the lad got a criminal record? Well, no, he hasn't.
No.
He said, but if not, why is he worried? Bring it on. And that's always been my thought of it, really. If you've nothing to hide... Peter was saying there's not enough government legislation around all this yet, so there should be that your face is captured, and if it doesn't register as being someone that they want to talk to, then your information has to be legally deleted, and also you're not being tagged everywhere you go. They're not sort of tracking you in that sense. So there needs to be more legislation around it. But so far, most of you seem to be in favour of it.
Yeah.
Apart from Eggs, who says the police don't arrest criminals as it is, so why do they need this AI CCTV?
On the Trump-Zelenskyy row, Nikki's been in touch saying Farage played it really well yesterday. Everybody was trying to trip him up. The line, take what Trump says seriously, but not literally, is just brilliant.
It's clever. Well, Nigel's a very astute operator, isn't he? And I think you see that in these sort of clips, which is where Trump isn't. But maybe that's part of his appeal to the people of the States. Anyway, we're talking about that in just a few minutes. Meanwhile, they're going to start with the Prime Minister, though, because, he's talked about this Brexit reset. Well, it's all charging on. The Times this morning saying that Britain is set to offer a youth mobility scheme to European nations.
Well, the deal could bring tens of thousands of young EU workers and students to the UK for up to 3 years, while granting young Britons similar opportunities in Europe.
Well, it's understood that if, and it is a big if, it was all to be implemented, there would be a cap on the number allowed to enter Britain.
Well, that's despite the EU previously stating that mobility is not subject to a quota.
It's fascinating that it's all being discussed in this way and talked about being on the table, because the government has reiterated its previous position, saying we don't have plans for a youth mobility agreement. We're committed to resetting the relationship with the EU to improve the British people's security, safety and prosperity. We have been clear there will be no return to freedom of movement, the customs union or the single market.
Well, earlier we asked the political editor of The Spectator, Katie Bors, what she thought.
I think it's all about what you might call it. You have these very specific red lines from the UK government, no return to freedom of movement, no customs union, for example, on trade. But you can see a world where if they manage to reset the relationship, probably at the summit in May, you could have things that look a little bit like a customs union, look a little bit like freedom of movement for young people, but they'll probably call it something else and hope they can get away with it. And therefore, I think we're into semantics. And it's quite clear on the question of freedom of movement that one of the big asks from the EU and from EU leaders is that they want to have something like a youth mobility scheme where young Europeans can come to the UK. And that is something that you keep hearing from all the ambassadors, but it's something that makes Number 10 nervous because they worry there'll be a political backlash and it will start to look like freedom of movement through the back door.
Now, across the pond.
Yes, across the pond. I was just going to say, let us know what you think about that one, because I said the government's sort of saying it's not going to happen. But as Katie was saying, semantics. It's all about the semantics.
Oh, well, Janice has been in touch.
Oh, thank you, Janice.
Saying Starmer is rejoining the EU drip by drip. Our fishermen need to watch out as they'll be heading for you next. This is all part of his plan.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to monitor it very closely, which we will. Now, the White House has cancelled... Well, this happened yesterday. There was meant to be a joint news conference with President Zelenskyy and General Kellogg, who's Trump's man in Ukraine. But there's been a falling out, it would seem, or a lack of faith in Donald Trump and General Kellogg. So the meeting went ahead, but the news conference was cancelled. Now, it all comes after President Trump dubbed his Ukrainian counterpart a dictator.
Well, meanwhile, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has waded in on the row, accusing Zelenskyy of being a fraud machine that feeds off the dead bodies of soldiers.
Well, Donald Trump stated that Russia holds the cards in any peace talks, as the country has taken a lot of territory.
Well, we're joined now by GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. And Mark, it does seem as though this war of words only seems to be escalating.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, if we thought that President Trump was, very critical in his wording of Zelenskyy, then, of course, Elon Musk last night calling him a disgusting graft machine feeding off the bodies of dead soldiers. I mean, it's, it certainly can never be described as anything other than a full and brutal attack on the Ukrainian leader. And, it's difficult to see how we can enter at the moment into any sort of negotiations between the two sides, with Ukraine perhaps feeling that it's going to be properly represented by a US-brokered ceasefire, if that's the kind of rhetoric that's coming out from officialdom.
I mean, I know you were saying earlier on that Trump is very offended by this, what was it, misinformation bubble or something?
He's deeply offended.
That Zelensky said Trump is in. Isn't there an argument to say it's at least not inaccurate?
Well, certainly President Trump's critics would say that, but from Donald Trump's perspective, remember, he's gone through years and years of trying to fight against accusations of collusion with Russia, of Russian interference in the previous US elections. That's been a very bitter fought process for Donald Trump. So there is no doubt that is a very tender spot to start poking. And Vladimir Zelenskyy, I would suggest, was probably a bit ill-judged in going there and terming the sort of criticism of Trump as effectively existing in this disinformation bubble. That was never going to end well, and it didn't. He opened up with both barrels, and now, of course, we're seeing others in his administration doing likewise. And I think the interesting and the very difficult process that we enter into next week are two significant European leaders, President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and of course the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, heading over to Washington and doing their level best to appear very supportive, of course, to the new president, but also trying to remain supportive of Volodymyr Zelenskyy, doing their level best, I'm sure, not to be caught in this venomous crossfire. What exactly can they do to sort of placate Donald Trump? I'm not sure.
Because, European leaders are standing full shoulder behind Ukraine still, and they made that very clear. And it would be very surprising if they didn't. But, of course, that's a massive dividing line then between the United States and Europe.
Yeah, and, round the table, away from the sort of prying eyes of the press, there can be full and frank discussions and probably more diplomatically couched. But if you get an end-of-visit press conference, that's where it could be a bit difficult, because we know Donald Trump goes off script. Keir Starmer will absolutely be pressed on putting his support behind Volodymyr Zelenskyy and repeating the fact that he is not, as Donald Trump has called him, a dictator. So that could be interesting. They'll both, well, at least I'm sure Keir Starmer will try his best to, step through that particular diplomatic minefield. But what could he do, perhaps, to placate Donald Trump? Well, maybe give a firm indication, not even an indication. We've had indications and pathways spoken about in terms of the defence spending of the UK. Maybe he can announce during his Washington trip that, yes, we are now going up to 2.5% within, the next 2-3 years, whatever it is. But is that even going to placate Donald Trump? He's talking about 5% spending from European leaders.
Yeah. What do you make of... Because in all of this, it's the diplomacy is fascinating, and what you said about the press conference at the end of Starmer's visit is going to be a nightmare. If I was him, I'd pull out, because it's just. But Farage, of course, everybody was trying to trip up on this, and and you can see why. His language on this has been. I mean, it's a masterclass in how to do it, saying take what Trump says seriously but not literally.
Yeah.
I mean, he's managed to avoid tripping himself up.
I think that was true before we got the absolute shocking broadside from President Trump and his administration. When he was talking about, Vladimir Zelenskyy needing to go to the elections, not being popular in the polls, he may have shouldn't have started the war in the first place. You can wade in amongst that and say, look, from Donald Trump, he is unfiltered in a lot of what we get. So yes, you're right that look to the direction of travel here and the intent being expressed by the individual rather than his specific words. But we seem to have moved on even from that now with very, very personal attacks on Vladimir Zelenskyy, followed up again after that Truth Social post from Donald Trump by the sort of news conference remarks that he gave that following evening. And then, as I say, this, visceral attack from Elon Musk as well. It doesn't look as though the Trump administration is holding back from the criticism of Vladimir Zelenskyy, and that the hope has to be that obviously as the days and the weeks pass before we get anywhere near negotiations, things calm down and relationships are built, because you can't go into, I don't think, a process at the moment and convince probably Ukraine that you're an honest broker when you're saying such public things about their leader.
Yeah.
OK, Mark White, good to see you. Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway. If you want to be one of our 2 new winners, each with a new iPhone, £500 worth of shopping vouchers and £10,000 in tax-free cash, here are all of the details that you need.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
18 minutes past 9. There's been a change in the fate of the world's most famous spy.
Bond. James Bond.
Whoa.
It's so smooth, isn't it? So smooth. The creative control of the James Bond franchise has been handed to Amazon Studios as part of a joint venture with their current owners.
Oh, the deal follows widespread speculation over the next movie, which there always is. And, of course, the next Bond. You'd be bored of seeing it in the papers when they always say the next Bond has been announced. And it turns out it hasn't been, anyway.
Well, it's also sparked widespread discussion about whether the franchise could see a bold rethink of Bond as we know it.
Well, one man who knows about all things 007 is the host of the Really 007 podcast, Matthew Pickup. Good to see you this morning. What do you make of the Broccolis handing this over? Is it going to change Bond fundamentally?
Well, it was a bit of a shock yesterday. We know that there've been problems between particularly Barbara Broccoli and Amazon before, so we knew that something had to give. We just weren't expecting it yesterday. So going forward, I think it will change in terms of how Bond is marketed, perhaps an increased amount of content, but it might also mean that a film comes sooner than it would have done otherwise.
Are you worried that it's going to be Americanized?
I have some trepidation in that regard, but I'm trying to stay positive and hopeful and think that, you know, the way that people watch things, films, TV series has changed. And so if Bond wants to stay relevant, then it's got to move with the times.
It has. I mean, the whole Americanization thing, I just sort of think they can't do it because that's its whole unique selling point, isn't it? And if you make it like everything else, well, you're not going to get the same audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. He needs to remain, you know, a British hero, the hero that Ian Fleming wrote in his books, the hero that's been on the screens for over 60 years and has made him popular. And if you start to strip away various aspects of his character and his identity, his nationality or whatever, then it just won't work the same. And you know, audiences aren't fools. They're not going to take to things that they don't recognise, and they want to see those things in their hero, James Bond.
Do you think we could then see a lot more of James Bond from the likes of Amazon? Would they create more content, if it were, from the franchise?
I think that that's a strong possibility, and that's what a lot of people think the disagreements between Barbara and Amazon might have been about. Now, whether that means lots of TV series about Q or Moneypenny or something, but that might be the case. Who knows? We'll have to see. And for some people, that might be a bit too far. But I think this, as I say, I think this will mean that we will be nearer to the next film, and perhaps rather than long gaps between each films, as we've had over the last 10 years, we might get more films more frequently.
I could have watched a Desmond Llewellyn film. I tell you that much for Q. I don't know about the current Q, but certainly a Desmond Llewellyn film would have been worth watching.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a real treasure. What an absolute icon and legend. Yeah, but whether we'll see something like that, a Q series, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. But for some people, this is a slightly scary period. Bond fans, you know, not sure what the future holds. But some of us are also, you know, trying to remain hopeful and see what the future does hold.
Yeah, and quite right.
Yeah, and who would you like to see as the next Bond, Matthew?
Well, it's a question that's been asked for many years now, since Daniel Craig said he was hanging up his wall for PPK. I think someone like Henry Cavill is now back in the picture, because I think they had been saying they wanted someone younger, and Henry Cavill, I think, has turned 40. They were thinking of someone early 30s, but he's now back in the frame. I think he'd be a solid choice who Amazon could promote, and he could, carry the weight of the franchise on his shoulders. And there's also Aaron Taylor-Johnson, who's been strongly linked. So we'll have to see if someone like that gets the gig, or whether it's an unknown, which would be a bigger risk for Amazon.
Yeah, it would be. Oh, Henry Cavill would be great. Matthew, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. No, Idris Elba would be the right choice.
He's too old now, that's what they're saying, though.
Do you think? I don't know.
Time is gone. Anyway, a queer. Nana Aquia is here, along with Leo, Ben Leo. Good morning.
I thought you looked a bit like James Bond with your new look.
Do you like his new look?
Are you vying for the role?
I don't like it.
Nana?
You don't like it?
You asked the question, what do you want me to lie on TV? I don't lie.
You have to tell him he looks very handsome.
Lie.
I quite like it.
I'm not sure.
No, well, I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm not sure. So
It was like the blonde.
He's a whole new man.
When you went blonde.
Yeah, that flaming wig gave me a rash. I'm not again. I don't want to be blonde ever again. You'd make a fabulous Bond girl, though.
Oh, thanks, Nana.
Oh, we were discussing.
I haven't got the call up, unfortunately.
Who would be the GB News Bond girl? Who would be the GB News Bond? Who would be, I don't know, Trevor Lan or...
I'd be like Dr. Scaramanga. I'd be the bad one.
You would be the bad one.
Oh, you'd be the villain.
I would absolutely love to play that, like an evil...
She called Domino in that... Domino. She was a nasty one, wasn't she? Suit you very well. Anyway, we've run out of time to find out what's in your show. We'll have to wait till 9:30.
Something.
We'll see you then.
Thanks, Ben and Nana.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled end to the week with some wet and windy weather from the west, but very mild for the time of year. A wet start across western areas, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, some heavy outbreaks of rain and also some strong winds at times too, with some Met Office warnings in force. Largely dry to start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but here later we'll even see some outbreaks of rain and some very strong gusty winds, particularly through the Irish Channel, perhaps even seeing some gales in the far northwest. But temperatures, highs of around 14 to 15 Celsius, so very mild for the time of year and much milder than it's been of late. So to end the day, there's still going to be plenty of wet and windy weather across parts of Scotland. Still a chance of some rather heavy outbreaks of rain, particularly across northern parts of Scotland. And a fair few showers starting to move into western coast too. These could be heavy with some hail and thunder. Similar across Northern Ireland, seeing some showers. It should start to turn largely dry across northern parts of England. Parts of Wales and the southwest should see some drier spells, but rain lingering on across the very far southeast. Now, where we see the drier weather, particularly across Wales, central parts of England, northern parts of England too, it will remain dry overnight, but turning quite misty and murky overnight too. And that rain still lingering across parts of the southeast, which leads us to a very damp morning to start the weekend. There's still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into northwest Scotland, but for many, a rather mild night on offer, particularly under cloudier skies. So a damp start across the southeast, but we'll eventually see any rain peter out as we head towards the afternoon. Plenty of blustery showers continuing across northwestern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland. But elsewhere, once any mist and low cloud clears, that actually should lead to some sunshine by the afternoon. But we can't rule out a few showers, particularly across Wales, central areas and parts of the southwest. But once again, another mild day on offer, particularly in the sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A96 is closed in both directions off the A920 Old Meldrum turnoff at Coalpay after an accident causing queues towards and away from Aberdeen. In Argyll and Bute, the A83 is partly blocked where a lorry's overturned in the Dunoon turnoff and Rest and Be Thankful, causing delays. In Powys, the A470 is blocked each way by an accident between Felinfack and Brecon, causing queues. The M48-7 bridge is closed each way between Wales and England because of strong winds. Diversions are by the M4 4 over the Prince of Wales Bridge. On the M4, heading out of London and into Berkshire, 2 out of 5 lanes closed westbound, just before junction 4B for the M25 after a car caught fire. Queues from junction 3 at Heston. And there are delays of up to an hour to train services in Cornwall between Penzance and Liscard, thanks to a tree that fell on the line earlier.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle,